views and opinions of the bunker and that of those individuals taking part are by no means a reflection of the University Gallery, Gallery North, and sometimes the individuals themselves.
So formal.
I just have to get that out of the way with.
The bit at the end, and the individuals, so we might say things and then
We don't mean it at all.
Okay, yeah.
Just devil's advocate or contradict ourselves or stuff like that. It's just to cover our own backs, really.
Yeah.
Because you could say things just to push the thought rather than to actually say you believe in something.
So, we're the bunker.
Yeah.
Hi.
And we have some very exciting guests joining us today. Would you like to introduce yourself, guests? Because we'd love you to.
Okay, I'm Gail. I'm doing a PhD at Northumbria University, but I'm the curator of the exhibition that this is part of, A Seat at the Table.
I'm Juliet Fleming. I'm on the MFA at Northumbria, and I'm also the director and curator of Gold Tapped, city centre gallery based on the first floor of the New Bridge project.
Hi, I'm Tommy and I'm a fraud.
Why are you a fraud?
Much to the annoyance of the art world. I'm joking. I'm just studying on the MA. I'm just...
How fraudulent. Who are you?
Who am I?
Is your name even Tommy?
Probably not. It's actually Thomas.
Maybe shook.
or Billy.
Billy, hey.
And Bunker Gang, shall we introduce ourselves?
Yeah.
I'm Sophie.
Charlie.
Oh, I like that.
Clockwise, man.
Ed. Sorry. I was just listening to the stream. I was just making sure it went.
And I'm Olivia.
And today,
Today we're talking about pedagogies.
or pedagogies.
Or pedagogies.
Pedal doggies. Whatever you want to say. I feel like I didn't necessarily know what this meant until quite recently, so should we maybe do a little definition for people
Dictionary corner.
who are listening?
Oh, no,
we do love dictionary corner.
Dung, dung, dung.
I've
Dictionary
wrote one
corner.
down.
You wrote one down.
Oh, Katie's written one down.
I think then we can go on to what we think it means.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two. The first one is the method and practice of teaching, especially as an academic or theoretical concept. And then the second one is like expanding on that. The discipline that deals with the theory and practice of teaching.
The what? Theory and practice of teaching?
Yeah. So
A discipline about discipline.
that deals with, yeah.
Oh. Inception.
Cool. So that's what.
The
Where did you get that
dictionaries.
from the dictionary?
Just the
The dictionary.
The first one on
The one, the only. Okay, what about what we kind of think, Gail? What I feel like for you is super. You're gonna have like a really good definition, and we're all waiting on that.
I don't. It just means like learning, teaching and learning. It's a fancy way of saying that. I think, I think it's rooted in the Greek origins of. I think it used to mean like teaching kids or something like that, and then it's been co-opted over the centuries to mean a generic term of teaching and learning. But I am not an expert in that at all. I'm not doing a teaching qualifications or anything like that. But my research does kind of focus a little bit on that, but that is purely because the research activity is taking place within a university, and the university's main aim is for teaching and learning. So.
Nice.
The dreaded teaching and learning.
Teaching and learning.
Always
Outcomes.
TNL,
And research as well, perhaps.
Yeah. What about you, Juliet? What's your kind of understanding of the term?
My understanding of the term is teaching, or learning, teaching. Ooh.
Can you?
That way round.
Either, no, it could be both.
So to teach how to teach.
Yes, to teach how to teach.
Or to teach how to learn.
And then learning how to teach.
Oh, okay. So being on either side of that.
Yeah. But I think I learnt that from a very different non-art spectrum when I was learning how to be a ski instructor, and they kept talking about pedagogy. Where are you going with that? And that's how they described it, that they were teaching us how to teach other people, and that's what we were becoming for instructors. So that's where I get my terminology from.
Okay, that's
We
interesting.
talked about it a lot for about 12 weeks.
That's interesting.
It was interesting.
I think in the context of a skier, like learning how to teach someone how to ski, it's like I've never even like kind of thought about those kind of skills that you have to taught, like have to be taught. You wouldn't put it in that context. So I was just going in the art route, but obviously there's
There's
other
lots of different routes.
yeah,
that
there's
we use
loads of
this
these
for.
teaching things.
Yeah.
Ah.
So they must talk about it a lot on teaching courses, I'm sure.
I feel like they must.
Constantly.
What about you, Tommy?
It's one of those words I've never heard of before until it was like, you know, someone puts it out there, then once you're aware of it, everyone who says it then becomes you're more aware of it. It's like on the guest lecture the other day, he said it about 4 times, and I was just like, where on earth has this word came from? Like, I didn't even know what, like when I came to uni, I didn't even know what indoctrinated meant, and then all of a sudden it's everywhere. Where's this word from? And it's just like, you know, okay. So apart from it being the mystique of the word, I'm not really sure what it means for me. I was reading up on it being about, some guy was relating it to a lot of Marxist theory, where it was, one quote was, what was it? Practice without theory is blind. Theory without practice is sterile. So that's one thing I kind of took from it. So, which I could kind of relate to quite a lot because most of my practice is totally blind.
It's blind.
Apart from the elaborate, like, you know, in your face like stuff I do, but, you know, that's kind of what I only took from it. You know.
Well, I suppose it's interesting for, like, when asking you to come and sort of be part of this conversation, is that the art school that you've come through, or like if we're focusing around the sort of institute and pedagogy in that sense, that it's you've done the BA and you came straight into second year.
Yeah.
BA. Then I'm writing your autobiography.
Who is this guy?
And then you did GSN,
The
which is
mystique of Tommy.
Never mind, pedagogy.
Yeah, let's just have a conversation about you.
Hey. and then you went to do GSN for 2 years.
2
and then
years,
you
yeah.
kind of like were still part of this school.
Yeah, they can't get rid of
Do you want to
it, it's
explain what
just-
GSN is for people who might not know, Ed?
Oh, Tommy, do you want to explain what GSN
Oh yeah,
is?
yeah. Go on, Tommy,
Yeah.
having done it yourself.
The advocate for Northumbria. GSN is just basically, well, not basically, it's a studio which is above on Squires on the 5th floor, and it's just given you're granted the opportunity to have, you know, you can make work without any like authorization, or like you can still get help from the uni, and you obviously have access to all the facilities like the workshop. But it's just, you know, being an artist in residence, which is like, you know, being around Newcastle, which is a great opportunity anyway, because you've got so much connections and there's so much going on, like every night, you know. It's like there is always something happening.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's the great thing about having a studio like that, because the view is amazing.
It is, it's such a
Yeah.
nice floor.
And it's just, you know, it's such a big space, and, you know, we put on a couple of shows last year up there, and it was just, you know, great having like the community brought into, you know, what GSN is, because some people don't even know what it is. It just has that sort of abbreviation, which has this sort of like stigma about it, like GSN.
Yeah. So GSN stands for Graduate Student Northumbria. So
That's
you're
the one.
actually in. You graduated. You weren't in any teaching. You weren't.
No,
You went
I
in.
did help out with some moon for a bit, so I was like, you know, I was confused as a teacher at one point. I've never.
And that was because Sunheen's a technician, so
Yeah.
he was essentially teaching skills, or was he?
Skills, yeah. So
And I think is that more important? Is that equally as important as the teaching the theory?
Oh, I think so, yeah. It's kind of like, again, relating back to that Marxist theory, it's like, you know, you kind of need to have that understanding of how materials work. I mean, I've recently been working a lot with porcelain, and I've had no idea that, I mean, you know this, Julia, it's just like, it's not the same as terracotta, and obviously that's one thing uni doesn't, like, you know, have, is a lot of porcelain sort of like techniques.
It only has terracotta.
Yeah, it has terracotta. Yeah, and then porcelain's like, oh, it should be exactly the same. No, there's been many tears over that, and obviously, so having someone like Sun Hoon and, you know, Jin Chao, and still having their, you know, having the connections there, especially with GSM, you want to learn a bit more without having the restriction of time frame within, you know,
Submissions.
yeah, submissions and all that jazz. So it's a lot more.
So as part of GSN, you could still use the facilities
Yeah.
alongside the studio.
Yeah, of course.
That's cool.
It's really nice. Yeah.
That is sick.
Do you feel like GSN was really good for peer-to-peer learning?
In what way?
I don't know, I guess I've been kind of thinking about how a lot of the learning that, for me, like I've done on the course has actually been not just like tutor to student or technician to student. I think it's like peer-to-peer quite often, and I've learned a lot from working with other people on the course or just listening to them. And I guess because GSN, like you said, it's more of an artist in residence kind of thing, you're not being taught formally. Do you feel like that kind of pushes you towards that peer-to-peer learning?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously the advantage of that is I've ended up, you know, befriending a lot of people up there too, and they kind of like, we reverberate off each other and just kind of like mirror each other's sort of like understanding of what making art is as well, you know.
Yeah.
It's like I've made friends with Matt and Nikki upstairs who are Jobo and the you know, the creative, the collaborative upstairs, yeah, creative collaborative upstairs. And yeah, it's just kind of like, that's what you mean by kind of learning through a different sort of framework, which is not so restricted. That's kind of, you know, that is what you can get from it, because it is like, you know, it is like having a family up there, especially when you're all artists trying to make like a reputation for yourselves.
Yeah. And the strength in numbers.
Yeah, strength in numbers, yeah.
Putting yourselves with other people, like you will have. It's a very good idea.
So do you think the studio practice is a good way of, like, so what Sophie was saying about the kind of peer-to-peer studio practice, being alone in the studio without any kind of sort of specific learning pushed at you, if you get me, is as important?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think so. I think if you find some other people that work in a similar to the way you work or differently and it works well together, I think you need to like nourish that, treasure that, because over time it becomes apparent that it's a lot harder on your own, and
So, like,
you can disseminate
Yeah.
the information about what you're doing a lot more easily to so many other people, and that's how you gain recognition and a platform in which to have these conversations.
Yeah, because they're quite lonely, isn't it? Especially
Yeah,
when you
definitely.
are by yourself. You know, you're doing this thing that not many people understand. And, you know, especially for me, I still live at home, and it's kind of like my parents like, "What the hell is he doing?" And then other people on the course are still like, "What the hell is he doing?" It's just a bit like, you know. But
I would really benefit from you guys just like talking through the kind of the structure of what the process of like what you actually do, like what is the structure, because that structure might be different to other like way art courses are run. So,
Yeah.
and from my own experience, it'd be good to
Yeah.
find
I think
out.
at this point, if we're going to do that, we should put the disclaimer back up, because we could be getting it wrong. Like, and I know that gets very misconstrued, that sometimes students have a different idea of how it runs.
Yeah, I
And
think.
so, like,
yeah.
but our kind of mode is that we, as in, like,
This is our
modules.
understanding of all of it.
Yeah, our understanding
Yeah,
of
totally.
modules and stuff like this.
Purely
is-
from your own perspectives.
Yeah.
we have 80 credits, so 120
Studio.
credits for the year.
But not even like credit, or maybe credits are important, but just like literally your day to day, like.
But
So, like,
I
lectures
think
and
to
seminars.
kind of like narrow it down, I think it's 120 credits for a year. So then you divide that up into hours, which is, I think, is it around 1,200 as that relates or something like that? This is where the disclaimer should come.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. I never
So-
heard of it like used in those terms, and that's
Yeah.
been like, so that's not something you've come up with. That
I
someone
mean,
described
yeah,
that
yeah,
to you.
I think, I can't
We should have
remember.
brought
This
a
is
module guide.
Yeah, I should have brought the module guide.
One
But I
credit
can't
equals 10
remember.
hours.
Something, I don't know.
Something as ridiculous as that.
But it's just like, so obviously we've got an 80 credit module, which is 800 hours, and when that is down to the studio practice, and so you think, oh, actually, I should be in the studio. There's so much of the time throughout that week.
Okay.
So if you divide it up into percentages throughout the week, you should be in 4 days or something like that. And then you should give like sort of a day or something for your history or your research or professional practice, and kind of like, so a lot of people think through fine art and through this course that it's got to do this essay, got to do the research, got to do that. Obviously you do still, but like it's focused on a lot of the academic side, and I think it's
Yeah.
what we were talking about, I think yesterday, that we have to justify ourselves for doing art. So they justify it by focusing more on the academic side of the art school.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
within
yeah.
this one, it's very much focused on the studio and the making and the process and the ideas. And, I mean, is that what you think?
Oh,
Obviously,
absolutely, yeah, especially
Juliet,
this
you
year.
come from Newcastle.
Yeah. It was never described to us in that way,
Yeah.
I think.
I might have to do some active research right now, just to make sure I'm explaining that
I
right.
think what I recall, disclaimer, what I recall from the from the degree was 4 years of quite intense studio time, research time, and one-to-one learning, but also a lot of peer learning, I think, because obviously the studios are quite compact, 15 or 20 people in a room not much bigger than this, is you get to know people well.
How many people in the
15 to
That's a
20?
lot.
That's a
Is
lot.
it? It's quite different.
I mean, a room like
Newcastle, I think.
maybe a room this size.
That's a lot.
In the undergrad, the ceilings are higher, but
Yeah.
um,
So we've got a photographer in the room right now.
yeah.
That's why there's a lot of like,
You can move it out.
like, yes.
I love when people do that whispered thing and then we just break and just go, "You alright?"
Hey!
Yeah, is it?
Cash lens cap on me.
But I think
Side
it was
profile
it
on me.
was
Everything gets like really.
what felt like became most important part of that was just hanging out in the studio. So even if you weren't making art or talking about making art or
And is that
looking at art books, it was still part of it. Like you know,
And is that the
go-
students leading that?
Oh,
Rather
for
than,
sure, yeah. Like
rather
you,
than
you
the
wanted
tutors,
to,
yeah.
you needed. Well, I mean, like obviously they want you to spend as much time in the studio as possible, but they don't expect you to stay there till 2 a.m. But people did.
Yeah. I think that's what, like, both my parents were teachers and I saw how much work they did outside. The fact that I was then kind of going, I want you to spend time with me kind of thing. But the fact that I know that the tutors are going through, they're artists themselves. So they're saying, be in the studio all the time because I want to be in the studio all the time.
Yeah.
And then they have to make sure that they do what the university and this sort of says. So like you're kind of obstructed by I don't know, they have like two kind of minds. You want to know them on an artist level, you want to know them on a teacher level. But it's like,
Is it because, like, what you're trying to say is having an art degree, it needs to be justified in itself, having that critical theory in order for it to be...
yeah, and I suppose with the studio, it's a... Is it?
Because I know
Technical
what you're saying.
My sister goes, but
Yo.
Handy. I squashed it.
Still there.
sorry, is it all good? Reese said it before. Reese says it like it's not a robot.
A good robot, Ria? A bad robot? Like what kind of robot are we talking? Probably this is like because yesterday we really I'm interested to know what Gail perfect on art school. Obviously, you went somewhere else different, like even in a city.
So I also went to art school when I graduated 12 years ago. So I went to art school in Scotland. So they have like your 4-year degrees in Scotland. So you do like foundation and that so you like to do that. So and the first foundation year is just like try and lots of things and then you do exercise. And then I went into foundation I almost thought there was a more specific ones what they would sound and the just that and the art at the time really that was so cool. And then I went there I did a master's 3 years which was in electronic imaging which is pretty much the same thing. But my experience it was really similar to your experience where it was just like hanging in a studio. Quite frankly, I didn't make that much work. Only made that much work maybe in the last like year. I went to an exchange in Ontario contract design in Toronto in my 3rd year, and the way that their art school system kind of operates over there is that they have modules, more specific modules, which are taught modules. So I was really lucky where I think I was going into the third year, but what I was able to do was pick across all different years and courses, basically just pick and choose from whatever I wanted to do. So I'd done like introduction to screenwriting, fourth year film and animation, using film, sound design for TV, and those were all like 6-week modules. And then you had like a brief, and then you had to do the brief. So I think because the skills that I was learning there were like, you needed to know exactly how to do Pro Tools and whatever for the sound, or you needed to know how to do frame-by-frame animation. So they were like really practical skills. I think that worked really well. It gave me a really good discipline and foundation for my final year when I came back to Scotland. But one of my best friends who I met out there, she was at Glasgow School of Art and then did the fine art thing there, and she found it really difficult because it was constructed in the same way but with her own practice as a fine artist, and she just felt like at that stage in her development she had got to a point that she knew what her studio practice was. She didn't necessarily really want to do a 6-week module and like wax painting, but like that's what was offered to her, and it isn't until your final year in North America that you actually get a studio. So like she was also making these like massive like paintings at the time and she didn't have anywhere to store them. So I think in the UK we're really lucky that we have the facilities to be able to like, still engage in studio practice. But what I'm interested in is, I think studio practice is like super important. I think the peer-to-peer learning that you get is really important, but I'm just wondering like how that interfaces with like the university gallery, for instance, and where maybe other things that are in the university could maybe come into that conversation, because ultimately when you leave art school, not many people are going to be artists, and also art practice is changing, so it is not, an aspect of it is about individual perspectives, but actually it's a collaborative process, like the whole time. So like kind of thinking about your practice and how it fits into a bigger, working with curators, working with a community group, working, with other artists to put on stuff. It's all about collaboration. Of course, that manifests itself a little bit in studio practice, but I'm wondering if there's other ways that, things could be pulled in, that is also like in your toolkit, if you like, to survive afterwards, because it's tough.
That's interesting you mentioned that, though. A lot of people who actually study on like a BA, for example, most of them, kind of disperse and just, go and get normal jobs afterwards, and it's kind of like only like a certain amount of handful actually do go on to, do like, different opportunities like GSN or masters, or they go and do like, different types of like specific masters, but it's really like, it does kind of like change the attitude of, people who thought they knew about one subject through that sort of like regimented curriculum. But I don't know, it's just kind of interesting what you were picking up on before about saying that it needs to kind of justify itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think yesterday we were kind of saying that it is that you compare, it's like that comparison between you and say someone else in the institution, in the university. You kind of go, oh, like I always, if I'm in a nightclub or something, and they're like, what do you do? And I go, fine art, and they go, oh, finance. That's good.
Yes, every single time. No, fine art, and they're like, oh.
I just say,
fine art only means painting, and it does. Really
what kind of
things
things
paint, doesn't it?
The best one I get is when they actually hear what I say, they go, why?
Why?
Well, I think
they're like, oh, okay, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Why?
That's not a real thing.
Not just my parents, why?
One thing that I think is particularly interesting is like the level of the ratio of the gender ratios in art schools at the moment, and how it's predominantly female, and then when you leave, the people who continue to be artists tend to be more predominantly male. The ones who end up going to MAs and stuff, it ends up levelling out and being more like 50-50 rather than the 80-20 that it was at BA level, and how it gets sort of like further and further up. And in relation to that and the discussions within that, I think I read something the other day which was saying, and this is definitely, I didn't say this, I just read this somewhere, but it was saying how when there's a group of people, a room of people at a meeting or something, and there are men and women, if there are more men there, then it tends to be that the conversation will be led more by men, and women are less likely to speak up. And then when there are more women in a conversation, everyone there seems to be more conversation around that, and more women have more to say when there are less men there, which I think is really, I'm not saying it, but someone did.
That's definitely, well, I don't know. From my experience, I think that's true.
From my experience, I think that's true, but I don't want to blanket statement that. And similarly, more women are more likely to be interrupted by men, and women of colour are even more likely to be interrupted by other people. And I think all that feeds into, the people who go to art school and then decide not to be artists. I think traditionally the artist is quite a solitary figure, quite sort of egotistical. And those are not considered traditionally feminine, I put inverted commas over what I've just said, traits. And are we just perpetuating these stereotypes? I don't know. Not us personally, but
we were talking about it the other day with how you felt. Don't talk, Gail. How you felt being kind of leading a show or leading an exhibition or doing a piece of work on your own, but yet they will always talk over you, or technician or anyone in the gallery that's a male will talk over you to talk to your husband, which is quite he's horrible.
Infuriating.
Yeah, so before, after I finished my masters, I did freelance filmmaking for a number of years. So this was in relation to Katie's kind of current job and interest in sound. And then I was a freelance filmmaker, and then I also worked as a digital media technician at a university. And my skills are kind of broad now. They're probably not that good anymore, but at the time they were pure on it. And and my husband is a fine artist. When we met, completely and utterly incapable of any sort of technological thing, pure, hasn't got a clue about how to set up stuff. A wee bit better now. But I'd quite often get him to come and hold the boom when I was doing freelance stuff, and quite often whoever would just like speak to him as if he was the person that had the expertise, was running the shoot and all that. And then I was like, actually, it's me. But like that idea of the solitary genius kind of artist figure, I mean, it's total crap. You know, and like David and I talk a little bit candidly in the recorded conversation that we have, also in the gallery. So David Lisser was invited to do a commission, but because of budgetary constraints, it didn't materialise. So instead what we did is we just had this like kind of long form conversation that we edited down to about 30 minutes, kind of talking about his relationship with how he makes work. He's not affiliated to any institution at the moment. He's been out of art school for roughly about 9 years. He's kind of making it as a freelance artist, and we're kind of talking about the constant hustle, the resilience that one needs to have afterwards, and how you need those networks and those kind of support structures, and also that creative thinking. And I think going back to Tommy, what you were saying about you know, the majority of folk don't, and you know how people are always like, what does an art degree give you? Me personally, I think what an art degree gives you is like the appreciation of aesthetics and philosophical kind of understanding. And I think going forward, when a lot of jobs are becoming more automated, those kind of perspectives of like understanding materials and creativity and discussing about what you think of the world is actually the really important traits that are inherently humanistic. And you know, I think we stand a good chance. So regardless of whether you go on and make art, that if you have 4 years of intensive learning about a perspective of going out and greeting and speaking to a world, I think that is more valuable than a finance degree.
And I think that like this I've not said anything for ages. So. I feel like I need to.
Charlie.
I've been sat listening, but I've just been thinking what I value is like would be the highest form of what I think is like the highest form of learning and education. And I think beyond someone standing at the front of a lecture hall and talking at me, or in a classroom, I think just the interaction with my peers and the people that are like-minded, and this like just having like, say for example, a Socratic dialogue conversation. Is because of like Gail said, it's like a philosophical understanding or a sociological understanding. Because of all that and the fact that it is so ambiguous and like subjective to a point, that for me is probably the more should be pushed on more, and the interaction between people should be. I think that would be my thing that I'm learning a lot more recently as well. That I was saying to Olivia yesterday that I can't find it harder to do work on my own. I need to be with people. Yeah. Like the last semester, I spent a lot of time not really wanting to make my own work, because I didn't see the point anymore. Like I kind of like talking to people about, even if like the theory of art, I'd rather like talk to someone about that. Rather than put it into my practice. And then if I was going to make something or make a piece of work, it would be I'd rather make that with someone, or like have someone, we bounce off each other and we find a way to like make something together. And then the interaction spreads out into the art world when you stop being a student typically. And that interaction and the networking is good because it gives you that ability to like think like a web.
Well, that comes back to that peer-to-peer learning, because that doesn't have, and that can be something really informal. It's not necessarily that you're formally trying to learn from someone, but just through or being around people and kind of talking to them, you end up kind of I don't know, like learning, even if you're learning just about yourself through like the way that you see yourself reflected in whatever you're doing with someone else.
Because I think it is, I think when it comes to something like art, if you go and pursue it as something of an interest, it is. Oh, what the fuck was that? No, everyone's opinion, everyone's ideas are equally as valid regardless of what other people have said about it, because it is all just like someone said this, but someone said this, and it's like, so then surely like Ed was saying, like you try and view the lecturers as teachers and as artists. For me, I would quite like to just view them as artists and as people that have the same kind of mind as me and want to think about that in a way. It's very difficult.
Well, I think that's where it's like, I would also agree with that. I would want to see them as artists, and they're learning from us, and like having the opportunity to work with them on projects is more important in my mind than learning
from them.
Then like a formal like you're a tutor, I'm a student. Like you put a PowerPoint on, I listen, I make notes. Maybe I fall asleep at the back. I don't know. Like kind of.
Maybe the Stuart Marshall in that comes like the film that I think Sophie, did you watch it? And did you watch it?
I didn't get a chance. You sent.
The Pedagogues. And it's like his film that he did with Neil. I've forgotten his name again. But he worked at Northumbria University when it was Polytechnic, and it was a film that he made with his students that kind of, because Neil was being sort of looked at, or like because there was this, he was homosexual.
So there's a thing, I don't think it's still around, probably maybe, called Section 28, which prohibited people talking about homosexuality, teachers talking about homosexuality to their students across all ages. It was a law, I think it's been modified, obviously you can talk, but there's still something dodgy about that you can't necessarily talk to, and again I might be just totally making this up, I think you can talk to primary school kids about homosexuality just now, I think.
I find it so
wasn't there like a teacher like last year who got suspended from their job at a primary school for
talking about different ways of it. So it's still, Section 28 was repealed, but there's still some dodge bit where it's not fully like open. So what Stuart Marshall and this other teacher kind of did with the students was they made Neil Bartlett was so I think Neil Bartlett was the guest guest like lecturer for a week or whatever, and they just made this really like funny video where Stuart is interviewing Neil about the contents of his stuff that he's brought to teach, and he's like dressed up in this typical kind of YMCA, like all leather,
bare chest,
typical kind of
look thing,
leather thing, like a cock ring and stuff, like just like totally like loads of like really like nods to the kind of subcultures of the kind of gay scene then. And but then is sort of saying, I just keep pencils in my briefcase and whatnot. And then at the end of it, the students are talking about how by just having a conversation with Neil, they've suddenly turned gay. And then they talk about how this girl was happily married and now she's like a lesbian.
And how it's affected their parents, and how the parents are split, and then they become.
Yeah, and then my granddad heard, and
It's. I think that kind of. Obviously, it's playing on the fact that how you see students and how they inspire you, or how you see tutors, how they inspire you and how you react with them. I think I thought that was a really good thing to sort of.
So yeah, it kind of plays in 2 points where it talks about the absurdity of this law, because obviously, by talking about it doesn't mean that by no way is like somebody going to start feeling that way.
It's very white heterosexual male.
Exactly. And then the way that talking about that kind of banking system within education where students are these like sponges and they're just going to like suck in everything from this like all-knowing teacher.
The banking is it was Paulo Freire term, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know.
He kind of like goes into it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does go into it, but there's this other guy called Illich who wrote another book called Ivan Illich, called something about schools. I can't remember it. But those two books in this kind of 70s are like founded on Marxist theory, and kind of talk about how deschooling something. Ivan Illich deschooling something. So he was like talking about a way of schooling that was kind of like based on the network, so like computers. So actually, Ivan Illich sort of kind of came up with the idea of the internet before the internet kind of came into existence. So this idea of this network distribution of teaching and learning, and how it's distributed, people feedback to one another and kind of continually communicate. Whereas the banking style is like you just absorb and that's what you take in and you don't give back. So there's no exchange, there's no dialogue. And Freire kind of expanded on that and said, well, actually, what should happen is that the student should begin kind of banking, because students don't necessarily have the same expertise, but at a point it should switch over and it should become more in dialogue with one another, and the tutor should then take on learning from the student.
Do we think that's why we have seminars after the lectures, so we can talk about the things we learn, but then we never actually
I don't learn a lot
in the seminars.
lectures.
We're encouraged to speak, but nobody does.
Really don't.
It's like, what do you think about that?
But I think that they can end up being very like a lecture, but just in a seminar room, not in a lecture theatre.
It's the same thing, just like regurgitated in a room.
Part of that is to do with the format that they take. The groups are really not so much for the like. What they called, the ones that are like the themes that where we have fight, but history, it's like half the year in each seminar group, 25 people. That doesn't really, it's alright. It doesn't really like facilitate good discussion, because if you're a bit shy, you're not going to want to talk in front of 25 people.
No. I think even sort of like going even further, saying the guest lecture program, to have questions right at the end, I think it's changed a lot. That it's on the students to kind of be that proactive, to ask questions and stuff like that. But we've changed. Like the whole zeitgeist of communication has changed. That we don't want to get up and talk. We don't want to put your hand up and kind of go, well, actually, if I say something, it's going to be really stupid. So and
there are a lot of people in there, so it's like a big like.
But I think I was joking around with the fact that this whole year I was going to put up my hand. You know, when it goes to that quiet like, oh, no one's going to ask a question, are the tutors going to clap or finish it? It's just to put your hand up right at the end when it's really quiet and go, what's your favourite colour? And then throughout the whole guest lecture programme, you'll find out everyone's favourite colour, and then you know that's the end, and you know that's that kind of. But if you asked it at the beginning, that you
There's
be
this
more
weird,
comfortable going.
there's this
to talk.
weird lull, isn't it? It's like you don't know, like everyone just kind of goes, yeah. It's
I
like
find
there
it
are these
so
questions,
stressful.
and then someone forces a question out. Like the other
Yeah.
day, someone asked like, "Oh, did you go to Lincoln?" Like,
It's like turning the lecture
God's
into it's
sake.
like a horror.
yeah.
It's stressful because I worry so much at the end that if we're not asking questions, they'll think that we weren't interested in what they were saying. But
Which
I think
is just not true.
yeah, it's not necessarily
Yeah.
true. You just
It's
haven't had any
overwhelming.
time to digest
Yeah.
anything they've said.
It's
And think of
overwhelming.
questions.
The overwhelming pressure and the lecture format for me is just fundamentally flawed. It doesn't work. I don't think it has anything that, like, for me, I can't learn that way. I don't think a lot of people learn that because you have lectures. When you, like, for history, you spend loads of time in lectures, but then you have to go and research yourself anyway because it's not gone in, or you have to go and look back again, and it's like sat and having someone talk at me is just like, oh, God.
Do you ever
man.
go on YouTube and listen to lectures on YouTube?
Yeah, I can. See, I can listen.
Yeah,
I can like listen to documentaries, TED talks, or like Vice things that happen like that way, and I absorb that easier than sitting in this chair.
But do you think it's like something, because I listen to a lot of like, you should totally like, so see if you ever come across like a theorist that you're really into, just Google them if they're living, and they will quite often have like a recorded in conversation or lecture from them. And so anyway, Bell Hooks is a theorist that I'm kind of interested in a little bit in relation to my thesis, and she has got so many recorded conversations with her and then like other amazing like thinkers in the world. But what I do is I'll like tidy up whilst I'm listening to it. So I think there's something in like your body is active, so you're doing something, but it's still kind of going into your your mind. It's a really good way of like.
That's interesting actually, because I was talking to someone about this. I think there's a Rush song based on like the different parts of your brain.
Slap at the bass.
By Rastafarian.
It's off thingy, isn't it? I Love You Man, where they go see a Rush concert.
Yeah.
Slap at the bass. Sorry, I had to get that out, man.
I watched that. Was good.
So the Rush song.
Yeah, so it's kind of like I know what you're saying when you sat there and you're in that sort of institutionalized sort of like box, and you can't really think of these things creatively because you're in that sort of environment. It's annoying. I can understand where that comes from. And you go to like the library and it's like, it's not, and like you were saying, like you tidy up like to the videos, you are accessing a different part of your brain. It's not necessarily the one that actually thinks creatively. It's kind of having that, and again going back to that, justifying the whole, having an art degree. It's really the hardest part I found when I was doing it was just trying to get that sort of balance of both, and just trying to really negotiate between the two, like researching what you're actually interested in, and then kind of like from that it comes out the actual productivity, but there's also like the arduous sort of task of finding out what sort of materials are like fully suited for your methodology. It's kind of like it's the hardest balance, and that's kind of what I think you really are trying to learn here, is that really sort of difficult area of expertise that you want to go through with. And it's just it's an ambiguous sort of road, but I think that's part of like the point of really trying to pursue your thing in an art degree.
That's why I think Erica's work is so interesting, because that's what she took away from that kind of setting, and that was her visual prompts of whatever she learned, and the body, the way that people were sat, and that kind of reflects better possibly how our brains work maybe.
Well, I guess another question, like, well, not a question, I don't know, I guess, like, also I feel like maybe a good thing to try, or what we're trying to do on the art degree, is to learn what can be researched, and to not, because I think we get a bit stuck in this idea that research equals books and equals going to the library and you must read, and if you don't do that you're not doing research. because that is the sort of way that
The system works.
yeah, and that's where the way that it's presented, that that's how you do, that's how you acquire knowledge, but that's not actually. I'm terrible. Like I don't read. I'd never do any reading, so
Neither do I.
I can't. Like audio stuff, I'd much rather listen to someone.
That's what this article was about. Practice as a form of research,
Mm.
and it was all about how we, in our research, we're looking at other people's practices, but why can't we look at our own to learn more from that? So I
Well,
think
is
it's really
that
true.
what a practice-led PhD is trying to do, in a way? Or do you not think it's getting to that?
It's like many, it comes in many forms, it's totally tailored, you know, it's the same disclaimer as undergraduate. It's tailored to the individual practice. I think practice-based or practice-led PhDs are there to talk about the knowledge that's generated through practice. So that could be like an art object and what comes from that art object, or it could be from a series of performances, or it could be this, which is me kind of playtesting through working in the curatorial, a way of trying to find out how the gallery can interface with you know, the teaching and learning that happens in there. And like, you know, this is an ongoing thing. It's not like it's not the final thing, you know, like I'll take reflection from this and then the next thing that I'll do, it'll feed into blah, blah, blah. There's a really nice quote, it's actually quite a long quote, but I'm just going to go for it, by a technologist or a physician, not a physicist, not a physician, a physicist called Karen Barrard, who, so she's like one of those kind of leading thinkers in new material feminism. And so there's like a lot of activity, philosophical or like epistemical talk around like materiality and whatnot from a science perspective. But when you kind of read like all these like really dense, heavy books, what they're talking about is really what like artists do. It's just that we are not very good at like staking our claim or naming our contribution. So anyway, this little thing, this quote is from a journal that I've got called it's Performance Research Journal, and this edition is on radical education. And this particular article is from Anushka Bailey, and it's called Transforming Higher Education Towards Post-Humanist Strategies of Teaching and Learning. So she's kind of like talking about the idea of these new material ideas, that where in the future we need to be more engaged with the ideas of matter and how we're all interconnected or intraconnected. And she's like, artists are already doing this. And she doesn't mean like visual artists, she means artists across the gambit, so from literary to performance to visual arts. But this is a quote from Karen Barrard. "We don't obtain knowledge by standing outside the world. We know because we are of the world. We are part of the world in its differential becoming. The separation of epistemology from ontology is a reverberation of a metaphysics that assumes an inherent difference between human and non-human, subject and object, mind and body, matter and discourse." Right, so ontology is like how the thing, what it's doing. Epistemology is knowledge, I think.
I have the definition here. It was in one of my
Did I get ontology right?
Oh, is that the same one? The theory of knowledge?
Epistemology. Yeah, so that's about knowledge, the theory of knowledge. Anyway, so then she goes on to what we need is something like a ethno-onto-epistemological and being, since each interaction matters, since the possibilities for what the world may become call out in the pause that precedes each breath before a moment comes into being and the world is remade again, because the becoming of the world is deeply an ethical matter. So that's like really wordy, but basically what she's saying is like the world is constantly in flux, it's constantly changing. There are lots and lots of different things that interact with each other that continually manipulate and change, and that what she's wanting to do is for us to consider the nuances of knowledge making that goes beyond thinking about it just being like, there's a bottle, I need to understand the form of this bottle, and this is the knowledge that I'm going to get from this bottle because I've understood the form of it, but actually there's something that's happening in this relationship between me and the bottle right now, and we need to kind of articulate that. And I think that's what art kind of does a little bit.
Because even though things change, lives in a state of flux, the interaction, the connectivity still exists regardless, even though the interactions might change. Whereas, and that's what I'm noticing about being at art school and being kind of pushing myself into the art world, the big beyond. That it is about interaction. Like the work doesn't really. It's like almost like, rather than it being like the interaction being the what's the word?
Primary.
Yeah, so like the interaction being the primary, and then the work is like secondary. Like it kind of like that's kind of a
surplus. Probably. So surplus to the. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's just that's the bit that comes afterwards in the conversations that need to happen beforehand.
Yeah.
Are what fuel that end product in some ways, but it depends. But then that it can also be that this primary conversation can become the artwork, like in this situation, and it doesn't need to end up having a physical form.
But then I think what is key to the new materialist kind of like gambit that Berard maybe goes on to say that is that the material also like communicates back. So we're not always putting on to, like we're getting back. So like when you talk about making objects or making things, when you manipulate a material, whatever that material is, it could be sound waves to a bit of clay, there's something that you are learning from that, which I think is inherently important as well.
Yeah, I think it goes beyond it, like an interaction that's just like between. I think I said this yesterday. There's like it goes beyond the interaction between like humans. There's an interaction between like we're saying with objects, but there's the interaction with like everything, and it's like. There's an actual. I can't remember what it. Might just because it doesn't matter. Yeah, but
heads and pretzels.
Yeah. But yeah, there is like it's. There is a, I don't know. I'm gonna shut up again. I'm trying to think and talk while I'm thinking. That's not a good thing to do.
Should we do a shift and do some of these?
Yep.
Okay. See
Cool.
what we.
So
What was the second question?
these are the slips that we put out in our guest lecture yesterday and asked people to fill in. And the question we asked people was, what is the purpose of art school? And we also said, please can you draw us a picture?
We
so
showed a lot
We
of them
showed a
yesterday.
lot of them yesterday.
Did we show all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
All of them?
Sadly, you won't see any more pictures today. I guess we're interested in this question because
I think.
It's good to get.
I mean it relates.
I think especially from the students.
Yeah.
Like who are in this sort of.
Like why are they here?
Yeah, why are they here? What are they doing? And I know we've got Ria's done a lot of research as well for us, and she did a poll last night as well. So we've got some things that could
Some
follow
more
on from
responses
this.
there.
But yeah, what?
Does anyone got one in particular that's in front of them that they would like to share with the
Yeah.
group? Yeah.
This one says to shift definitions, not make them.
To shift definitions.
Yes.
I've got, well, from yesterday, do you remember why do we make art was to answer why we make it. And then the same person, what is the purpose of art school? To ask a question. And it's kind of like, it's all muddled up in this loop of why we're making it.
Cyclical, or as Ed said yesterday, secular.
Such a secular art school. If this person even signed it.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting, like to ask the questions, like what is the purpose of an art school? It's to ask the question of what is, why, and stuff like that.
Why?
Well, I feel like art school is about processes, not about
Oh yeah.
Is it,
outcome.
which question is it again?
Yeah.
So it's the
Second
what's the
one.
purpose?
So someone's actually put a quote, it's to put all the knowledge of everyone in one place by Paul Stewart.
And he was the guest lecturer on Wednesday. And
Very
It actually
interesting
makes
person.
sense. The thing is, it actually makes like as daft as it when he was laughing himself, but it does make sense
It
because
does.
it's just this constant strive to try and pull everything together
Mm.
because there's so much. You obviously
Yeah.
you're never going to be able to do
Even
it.
if it's a
That's-
micro community of
yeah.
groups like this.
But that's why the interaction's important to try and achieve that because everyone else is going to have something that you don't have or that someone else doesn't have.
Well, Paul Stewart works in the 5 aspects of the Paulo Freire, or his work is the dialogue, practice, naming of the world, lived experience and transcendence. And it's those he works within the workshops to, as a collective, and he uses karaoke as a way of bringing people in together. And it's those 5 things that you work together to define what they mean, to then become a performance score, to then act it out. But it's all, it's up in the air, like you don't know. And it's the fact that the dialogue is there, but you have to try and define it, and then the practice, or a fancy word for practice. So it's a good quote from.
Do you know what's really interesting about Paulo Freire, just talking about secular, is that it comes from a really deeply Catholic.
The transcendence.
It's got
Jesuit. Is it Jesuit Catholic school from like the when did he make that book, like 1950s or something, in South America, which was like totally across like the continent. I find that really, so it's like a deeply inherent religious
I think that
kind of ideology.
Yeah, isn't that's like you
that is
transcend
seen
God.
as radical.
Yeah, transcendence is like
transcend the teacher.
Transcend your it's your like earthly experience, I think, isn't it?
But then also like in kind of Western philosophy, the kind of our idea of knowledge is to transcend into a higher. We're always aspiring into a higher plane, and I think like what this kind of thing about interactive or like interactive is like you don't need to ascend, you can just like move to the left, move to the right, go down. You know, you don't need to keep aspiring to get this truth.
Yeah.
Do you think that aspirational drive is comes from our wider kind of like neoliberal society? Or do you think that was already? Do you think it's driven by a productivity obsessed?
Yeah. This in that other essay, she talks a lot about the continued quantitative metric of the education. No, wait a minute. I should really have like. No, wait a minute. Never mind.
That's a nice green pen on there.
Thanks.
Guessing that's your book. I've got one here which says, what is the purpose of art school? To allow freedom of thought and ideas. And then someone else said, to be schooled on art.
What does that mean? What do we think that means?
Schools. Pedagogy.
School on art.
I mean, there's still this sort of like liberating thing that everyone kind of says, like, to be like freed of something.
Yeah.
Or there's like, the direct opposite is the cynical. It's like, which one have I got? Was it, I asked this too much and I have no idea. But you want them to, or it's like there's the direct opposite, which is to work along with others for inspiration and collaboration, a foundation for creating. It's it's kind of like people who are, it's the dichotomy of two people who are like perhaps struggling to accept the sort of like the communication, and then there's obviously people who are totally embracing it. But it's it is evident that it kind of having these sort of like mini sort of societies collaborating together does kind of prolong that sort of liberation, I guess.
Yeah.
Even if it is from outsources, like you were saying, from your inspiration being like from Vice magazine, or something which isn't necessarily
or Rush,
Yeah.
or Frank Zappa.
Yeah. What a genius, though, by the way, Frank Zappa.
Well, that's where most of I kind of learned a lot of my stuff from his attitude rather than kind of researching a lot of stuff. It was just like there's a lot of things he doesn't agree with in society, and I just totally agree with him.
I was just thinking there, because there's an idea that I hold with veganism, that it's kind of like we ignore that everything. You're laughing at me. Are you laughing at me?
I just won't be Robin.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's this.
This Charlie never mentioned.
Yeah, surely you've heard.
Well, I am as well. So.
I have this idea that the reason that people don't, This is because obviously it's like the self-preservation, look after you. That's where like that kind of attached itself to this like meat-eating kind of thing, and that's why their argument comes from. But if you pull into this kind of and acknowledge the ecosystem and the fact that everything is so finely tuned that it works on, and you need the interactions for it to work together. Just like people, I kicked off with someone a couple of years ago because I asked him, do you think you yourself and other humans are more important than bees? And he went, yeah, I do. And I went, do you know that? I went, do you know if all bees wiped out, we would cease to exist? Then this is the point that the thing people miss, that it is so important to take care of everything else in the world in order to like benefit, for everyone to benefit from it. And that's why you need to pull things like, so like you don't, and that's kind of for me, this interaction using the art world as a microcosm for that, to explain that, and acknowledging that rather than being this like you said, it being bullshit, that it's like the solitary genius is like, because it is like, it is about this like
appreciation
of aesthetics and pulling people together, just like in the world, it's like pulling everything together, like even not just animals, it's like everything, like. So it sounds a bit preachy, like.
No, it's not, because I can totally relate. You're kind of saying that sort of attitude of having total empathy towards animals is kind of having an empathy towards art.
Yeah.
It's kind of that, you know, I can understand that.
It's togetherness, like.
But it's that kind of society's ignorance, which is, you know, hence, you know, like me for example, if I go home, my parents don't understand, or they think they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, they think they do, but it's kind of like, you know, to them it's that kind of like, you know, as a selling point, it's kind of like, if you sold anything yet, it's always that difficulty of like going, you know, saying, well, no, I haven't, but then having that sort of like loneliness to deal with, you know, of the outside world. And, you know, I can see where you're coming from with that, you know, saying that's, you know, there's a lot of people who are just like, you know, oh, well, you know, I can choose to do that, but it's like how people are so numb to not understanding the appreciation of aesthetics, as you were saying before, Gail, which totally spoke to us. It's, you know, it's kind of a bit deafening, you know, and a little bit kind of cold, but it's one of those things that we have to do in order to kind of like stick together. I know it's not a quote the Beatles now, come together.
Because there's a misconception that veganism is to like take care of animals. Like that's the basic premise is what it is, but it is to take care of everything, and that is like like using it as an ecosystem. And like when you if I think about what I've started doing recently with obviously the bunker and stuff, and the fact that I'm like learning to interact with other people, I would start to say that veganism would probably that I'm learning to accept that more in my practice without even realising that it is kind of like learning to appreciate everything rather than think, oh, I'm on my own, I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of myself as my own artist and push my own practice. No, it's like I push other people. You try and push other people's practices as well.
I mean,
definitely.
I think within that, within the veganism ethos, there's also like within that there's lots of different levels, like say almonds and avocados are not very good for the environment, especially when they get ferried over from Argentina or wherever. And you know, if you were to own a chicken in your back garden, they were laying eggs, and you ate that chicken at the end of its life, that would be better for the environment than you eating lots of avocados. So there's so many different like layers and relationships within that because we live in such a sort of like globalized situation now, where everything's so easily available. You know, you can like pick and choose your avocados. If it does a bit bruised, you just leave it. You don't not buy them. You just.
Do you know what I was told about avocados? I said, oh, I had avocado on toast, and then someone just came up to me and went, well, if you buy avocados, you'll never own a house.
Yeah, did you not hear that guy
if you
who
buy
said
avocados, you'll
that
never
the
own a
reason that
house?
millennials will never own homes is because they buy too much avocado and toast? I think it was like an American politician.
Really weird correlation.
They were literally like, that's why they say that life's hard for them and that, you know, the economy is shit for them, but it's actually because they eat avocado and toast.
It was bizarre. This person in the pub said it to me. And
I know.
I was just like, did you?
Yeah, I think that kind of like, you know, if you're trying to make like an ethically conscious choice in your life, sometimes you can get trapped though.
Yeah.
Like you said, you want to be like ethical, you want to be vegan, but then you're also thinking about environment and climate and like
plastic bags.
Just you know, you have to start somewhere, because if you try and do everything at once, you will literally be like so overwhelmed and not be able to move.
But that's like we were talking about yesterday about art in general, is that if you overthink it, you just can't. You can't
It's just
move.
stationary.
You can't.
Yeah.
And it applies for
Yeah.
veganism as well.
Yeah.
And art. So that if you overthink it, you're never going to do it. You can't.
Yeah. When you,
Not every interaction is a good. You have to acknowledge that not every interaction is going to be a positive interaction. Like,
yeah.
for me, there's a good and bad with everything. Like, it's like there's like a fox will kill a chicken, but then like a chicken will give birth to another chicken. Like, and it all works.
Not after it's been eaten.
The fox kills the chicken, but then the fox is fed.
You know, yeah, and it's
Is
like,
that what we're?
it's like if you didn't have people. It's like the idea of dead dogma. If you didn't have an idea of what wasn't a truth, then you wouldn't like if as long as something only stays true, and something as long as it opposes everything else. So if you stop trying to challenge it, and you don't have people that go, you know what, this is and even though it could be totally wrong, like you need the things of wrong. It's like the invention of lying, like because you didn't know it's a lie, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So even though like this is the assumption that maybe I was saying that every interaction would be a good thing.
Well, yeah.
It's not. It's I acknowledge that. So I have to accept that some interactions are going to be terrible.
Well, he's the perfect advocate for that film, though, Ricky Gervais, and because obviously he's a, he's a not devout atheist. It's the wrong word to use, but he is just, he's known for being an atheist.
He's vegan as well.
Oh, he's vegan as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of like, it's one of those things which are challenging people's doctrines, and like just because you don't touch that. You were saying yesterday, don't touch that apple. It's like, fine. It's like just don't touch it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, but then everyone kind of believes it. It's kind of like that sort of, you're conditioned in that sort of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not kind of like being the advocate for atheism here. I'm just.
What's the idea or notion that if you say something's going to happen, even if it wasn't before, it will happen because you said it was self-fulfilling prophecy. So in those sort of, I think there's something like correlated between that.
Yeah.
But there was something I heard the other day about our generation, the millennial generation, about how we don't value, when you're talking about like people who buy avocados don't want to buy houses, we don't value things as much as we value experiences. So people are eating out loads more, people are going away loads more, people are wanting to travel the world or go air ballooning or whatever, fun activity there is, rather than buying a new jumper. And I think that's a really interesting like change and shift from like the 1950s where everyone treasured lots of things and everything was a bit more like scarce. And now we've got so much stuff, everything's so easily available, it's not fun anymore.
What can you not buy?
Yeah, exactly.
In a way.
You need something that's a bit more like look forward to, and it's the memories and that are more treasured.
Interesting thinking about a degree, because an art degree at the end of it, like having an art degree isn't necessarily as like, we don't value it as much as like the experience along the way, whereas like I don't know, maybe a graduate in a different subject, their degree is maybe worth more when they go out in the actual having a degree, being able to put it on the CV is like, I've achieved this, whereas with
I think you undervalue yourself.
Yeah.
I think art degrees are extremely diverse, and we have organisational abilities, things that other people haven't gained in other degrees that
but I think
are so much
that's
more
what
far.
I mean.
You actually, you have to promote yourself that you have those in a way that you don't if you maybe have got like a traditionally academic degree. You're assumed to have that skill set, whereas perhaps you'd have to be really like proactive in an interview about like why you have got those adaptable skills, and really like maybe just have to work a bit harder to show that.
I think Ria's got a response here from someone who says a negative thing is people assuming what you want to do in the future. The fact you're studying that art doesn't necessarily mean you want to be an artist in the future. There's a lot of narrow-mindedness or lack of knowledge in that sense. But the best thing about studying art is the freedom, especially in sort of your last few years of it. I'm guessing this is just in the undergrad, because it's in the third year, all the teaching has been taught. And it's about we can just apply everything we know to our final sort of push, I guess. So it's like that knowing afterwards of like when you say like comparing a degree against another degree.
Well, I mean, what are degrees for?
Yeah.
Like, are they for employability?
Well, hasn't that changed now?
I
'Cause
felt,
think it's
yeah, I was thinking.
become GCSEs.
Well, no, I was thinking we should discuss that maybe like in relation to this, because we were talking about like buying experiences and buying things. Higher education is now a commodity.
Mm.
We pay to go here, and how is that? I mean, it's hard for us to say how that's changed things because we did not go to uni before. It cost money, but
I think there is a lot of people that I know, especially that have gone to university, that still view university as something to get a job at the end of it. It's like, and there's like this employability factor behind it. Like my friend who I live with, he does business and financial management, and he just sees it as like, how can you get a job at the end of it? Not like, how could he think about creating a new business model, like new models for business and new ways of like developing the idea of business. It's just like, how can I get a job? How can I get that
Social
thing?
pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like, you're spending so much money. Surely you should have an interest in the topic that goes beyond like an economic gain. Like
at the same time, we can't bash people because the society has made like they
No,
feel that that's a
yeah.
necessity because they feel like it is a bad time to try and find a job, and
yeah,
people just doing what they feel like they need to do
yeah,
to, I don't want to say survive, sounds too dramatic, but do you know what I mean, to kind of
Make themselves stand out
yeah,
in like the sort of job market.
yeah.
I think that's similarly like transferred to the arts, where, you know, I was looking at some jobs earlier today, and it said, you know, you must be either finishing off a doctorate or have a doctorate to get this job. And now, what 10 years ago, was that even the case? Would you have just needed an MA, or could you have just been like a really great BA graduate with like, and they'd, you know, take a chance on you? And now it seems you need more qualifications in order to be on par with everybody else in their qualifications, because there are more people applying for these jobs.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just perpetual. And are we going to end up having something that's higher than a doctorate, or are you just going to have lots of doctorates at the end of this? And like 40 years times, everyone's going to have 4 doctorates, otherwise they're just not worth it.
Yeah.
My bus driver
When
for
everyone's
college
super,
had
no one is.
seven PhDs. She was
What?
like,
Who did?
my bus driver for my college. It's like she was on doing her 7th PhD or something, like
That is
like in
insane.
physics and like biochemistry and everything.
That's
So
It
is
was
her title
bonkers.
like doctor?
She was like
doctor,
60,
doctor?
but she was this.
One every 10 years.
She was just crackers, man. She was
That's
like, she was so
amazing.
interested in listening as well. I used to sit at the front and talk to her, and like me and my girlfriend used to sit and like immersively talk to this woman, and she just bang on about like how she has this many different things and what she's doing, and like it's like, you are phenomenal. Like, you still drive a bus. You drive a bus full of people that give you grief all the time as well, and the students were really horrible to her. Sorry, it's a bit of a sidetrack to what we're on about.
I think with what we've been talking about as well is Ria asks a good question about, so how does art suffer or benefit from being advertised as something that is learned? And it's just
Can you
like,
say that again?
so how does art suffer or benefit from being advertised as something that is learned? So it's how do you, I suppose in an institutional like this or a university, it is fine art or contemporary art is advertised. It's a selling point. It's like got to kind of say, this is what we do, this is what happens here, and it's like someone's response was, it's turned into something that's elite, and it's sort of mystified, and it's like this. With what you were saying about pedagogy, you don't know what it is about. It's
it's got this label to it. Yeah.
And its
that
audience.
was said in a history lecture. It says, whether you like it or not, by studying art, you're part of the elite.
Oh yeah, who was it who said that? I think, was it Rupert Ashmore? Or was it well, a history of art. And then I think that was interesting, like especially the reactions within our year group, because people were
didn't
not
like
happy
it.
about
Yeah, they rejected
thinking
it.
that.
Yeah.
They don't like to hear that, but you can't escape from the fact that you've kind of, I don't know, you're part of that, can you? You can't.
Yeah.
Well, Tommy, you've been here 50 years, so what was it like growing up? Did
I
you?
don't age. There's actually a picture of me upstairs. It's probably a horrible one of a skull.
No, just your hairstyle's changed. But like you've been, so throughout yours, did you feel like you were part of an elite? And I suppose with Juliet, with Newcastle, Northumbria, it's not this divide that has come about through history.
Those weird T-shirts that everyone was wearing.
Yes.
Oh my,
Polyverse
yeah.
apart.
And I think that's a nationwide thing. Like that's between the university office and the polytechnics. But what did you think? You were part of an elite? Did you think you were part of an elite within an art school or context?
Absolutely not, no.
And what about Juliet?
I think that people who choose to do art have, and I think I got this a lot from my mother. She was like, well, if you're going to do art, you sure you want to do art? You sure you don't want to do maths? You're a bit more likely to get a better job at the end of it.
Yeah.
In maths, I can't even do maths. Why maths? And so that was a big, part of it. I think after you graduate, you need to be able to support yourself by either having a second job as well as your practice to continue to be an artist. Although I do think that the art university degree does give you this really broad range of skills that you can draw from that will be really great for loads of different jobs in advertising, events management, loads of other really important things that you can make money from. People don't see it that way when they start. They definitely don't think, at the end of this degree I'm going to have a great job with loads of money. And so people, and lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, choose to do something else because they don't think they're going to end up, better off than their parents. And we're the first generation who are going to be less well off than our parents. I was talking to somebody else about that, and she's a doctor who studied at Newcastle, and she was saying how in her upbringing she wasn't pushed towards any of the arts because she was black and her family wanted, better for her. They wanted her to become something really, really important and valued in society. So, the lack of different races in the art school environment. I mean, there's maybe in my year there was maybe one or two people who were mixed race or BAEM. So I do think that there is a classist element to it because of that.
It reflects society as a wider. I think there's this idea within art. People like to think that they're really aware, maybe.
Yeah.
Woke and they want to think that they're kind of really good at checking their privilege, but actually it is to be within an art world is privilege in itself. And like you said, if you have to be able to support yourself, that kind of does end up lending itself towards people who can, if they get stuck, have someone that they can go, oh, could you lend me some money? And it just reflects it does end up reflecting and I'm not saying that's not a hard and fast rule, and I know that's not true of everyone, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It does reflect wider kind of social privileges and oppressions that exist in society. How
do people think about art schools separate from institutions? So you've got Black Mountain College, you've got
I knew you were going to say
Black Mountain College.
Were you talking?
Jam-
You
Yeah.
Or Falmouth and
all
the University Arts London, those places.
So obviously with I think we've all.
I see them as quite I remember when.
Do you think they're their own kind of society themselves, and they kind of really shut themselves off?
Because when Mia was applying for universities, she was had this thing about Falmouth being this prestigious photography, had a thing for photography, and it was it's oh my god, I really want to go to Falmouth. It's meant to be amazing for photography. And then she was like, oh, Ben's got into Falmouth, bloody no. And she was but then she was like, oh, Sunderland's meant to be really good for photography. Richard Billing was there, and this, that, and the other. And I was like, well, go for that then, rather than going for this Ponty. I'm joking.
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
Is it more you're commenting on the sort of prestigious elite?
Yeah. It's more the way people perceive it. It probably isn't that bad when you get there. Probably just
I think a lot of this is to do with time.
Yeah.
Just so you picked up by the mic, because you might not get picked up.
Someone in the gallery.
You can pull up a stool.
Stool?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want.
She loves it really.
Introduce yourself first.
I am Robin.
No, I just think that sometimes a lot of the case with things like that, I think it's to do with just literally the name of the institutions. Like, yeah, they have, in a lot of cases, they have built this reputation because of like the way that people are leaving, and they have the skills that are like, I'm really pausing my point. They have specialised skills that make their institutions get this reputation, but I think a lot of the time it is just about the name. So like Leeds College of Art, where I'm from, is like really near there, and everyone thinks that that place is like a lot better than most. And if you don't go there for your foundation, you're not going to get into uni.
I've actually got
which
a lot.
Everyone says at our school, and I know loads of people that go there now. But I think quite confidently that if they went to like somewhere here, they're not better off from going to Leeds College of Art. It's just a different way of learning, and I think that because everyone spreads this name of. I'm not saying Leeds College of Art isn't bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
Obviously
And I've got
it's just
feedback from
cultural
quite a
capital,
few
isn't it,
people
that
from Leeds College of Art as well. That obviously it's anonymous, and I don't know which ones are which, but some of them were. I know I've talked to people from like these different institutes, and it's a case by case basis of what's good and what's not, or what is sort of you tailor the course for yourself, like how you kind of morph into the structures of it. And I think it's easy for someone from a different university to say it's really bad, or I don't really like it here, and it's fine for us to say that about this sort of university. It's fine to say that we don't agree with how the course is run or stuff like this, but then it's the change, and then it's the fact that our voice can then be heard over there and their voice can be heard over here. That's important to change how we perceive the whole thing. I know Leeds College of Art, they've changed their name. Or was it Leeds Beckett, Leeds College of Art?
No, they're separate.
And then there's Leeds University, and there was this confusion of so many Leeds institutes to then hone in on the whole art thing, the art school, as its kind of method, not method. Calling an art school is using a model of.
Well, that's what I mean.
Of the history.
I think if you called this an art school, people would be more inclined to apply, just for literally just the name
Yeah.
saying.
But
not because something's better or worse, just because people don't really like look. I think it's just easy to think of the way something's talked about rather than actually think of the actual experience and the things you like learning and what you've benefited. Because I could have the same like education if I went to Leeds College of Art, and like I'm not saying it's worse or better like than here, but I just think there's a naming about things that changes how people think they are experiencing it at the time.
The names carry certain levels of cultural
Reputation.
capital, and it doesn't that's not just in art, that's the same with like, if people assume that like Oxbridge is the best unis, that's like because they have that kind of it's not necessarily, and then they assume Russell Group unis are better than other unis.
So it goes back to like how art is advertised. Like we just had a comment on the YouTube saying that this is a great conversation that we're having for someone who's just applied to uni, and it's just like, obviously if these conversations need to happen about art schools, about universities, and especially obviously within our context we're talking about fine art, but beyond that there's conversation that could be had for other subjects, where was I going with that? It's the kind of it's the naming, these advertisements, but is it the course that should advertise what they do, or is it the students that should take sort of leadership in the kind of, and then it goes into the kind of
But what would be the benefit of the students advertising to other students to come and join them?
I think that's quite, only because you wrote me into doing that talk about my work, remember?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And they kind of like they kind of structured me to do things the way they wanted to be advertised, rather than like I was saying, look, like the way we get to do the course, we don't have briefs, like we don't do any of this. We don't. Like, oh, can you just pretend? Like, no, like why am I pretending? Like I should be able to be honest. Like the course should be honest about the way, like. At least be honest about the way that it's structured, so that people go, you know what, I think it's really cool.
Just in some context, this was a marketing film that we were asked to do for the university. That was then, can you talk about this? Can you talk about this kind of subject? So there's some of it that working with a tutor on that was all right, because you kind of know in that. But I think. Do you want to just record that? that it's kind of about like that corporate back. Sorry, I'm just.
I think that's so I'm wondering, I didn't realise until when I was at school, I didn't think I was going to go to I actually didn't know there were art degrees that existed in the university. I don't know if I still aware of like in London, most art things are just looking solid. But we were never told about like art degrees at uni. It was like central artists and stuff like that. And I'm wondering, because we kind of did decide to go because mine was next week my what made you just go to art situated in the university?
Sorry, it's just trying to work with it.
I know that's what it's.
Essentially, do you want to possibly pause it, you can't hear anything. Sorry, that was sorry.
I think like this is just a dreaming issue rather than.
There's not enough.
It could be yesterday, it just said streaming offline and you went on. So that might be useful.
Yeah, I think when it goes to it's an internet thing.
Yeah.
So it's like
Something that you can
so it goes to 5 minutes.
Stuff like I'm just really shit.
Well, like they can hear us.
Yeah.
We're still streaming, right?
Yeah.
You need to fix the Wi-Fi.
What you were saying about art schools, you only thought art schools were art schools and there weren't art universities.
Yeah.
I think that was a big selling point for Newcastle, saying, oh, it's not a university. You can talk to other people on different courses, you can go to all their different lectures. I mean, no one did, but the option was there. And I think that is, that has been an important part of lots of people's art practice because they've been able to interact with other disciplines. It's meant, they've been able to find interesting ways of working together collaboratively.
I think there's maybe one or two that are still independent art schools. The majority of art schools in the 2000s or basically from the 1990s had to merge with universities, so they might say that they're independent, but they're actually still
part of like University of Arts London. And
exactly.
Stuff.
So, and they still have to adhere to the structures and systems and whatnot. I think with Northumbria it's particularly distinct because it never had an identity as an art school independent thereof. It was a technical college, but it wasn't purely just for art. It was a technical college that had lots of other different things. So it never really had that identity as that space. And then when it became part of a more corporate university and a polytechnic that transferred into university, they tend to be, modern universities tend to be much more business orientated than the Russell Group, for instance, because they don't necessarily have that legacy of independence of knowledge beyond the town, like apart from the town. So the idea of like Oxbridge or Newcastle is that knowledge was this like pristine, beautiful ivory tower thing that had to be cultivated and whatever. Whereas the polytechnics were, they were there to train people for jobs, give them skills, but like really interesting stuff came out of that. But that was their primary purpose. So then when they became a university post 1992, that ethos was just built upon. And I think that's why there's always this like rub against the outer workings of the university departments, like the marketing department, like just being like, well, that you just we just need this, we just need you to say that you do this because that's what every other course does. So they can't quite navigate how this course operates. And there's some like nice lightness in that where the tutors are able to somehow keep that pressure out, but they can only do it for so long.
One thing that I think is quite interesting is that although both like Newcastle and Northumbria have their pros and cons, I definitely feel like Northumbria, and this is my personal opinion, maybe it prepares you more for the wider context of the art scene and the art world. I definitely feel like there was a lot of that at Newcastle, but from my recent time spent at Northumbria, I do think like these conversations that are currently happening right now, that didn't happen while I was at Newcastle. So I think that's more interesting, and I think there is definitely some new different kind of ways of working in art, and like merging any crafts or more sort of technological things or things that maybe previously weren't considered art. It feels like this environment is a lot more open to every form of that, and like, you know, fine art in the expanded field, which is something maybe that has come from the fact that it was a polytechnic, that it was designed for people to get jobs at the end of it, and similarly it's like kind of kept that going.
Do you think like I don't know if they still do, but Newcastle obviously have not obviously, I don't know, but they have sculpture and painting.
No,
they're different.
No,
they don't do that.
They did that previously.
Yeah.
But they switched it before I arrived, so I went there and I was fine art, and everyone else was fine art as well.
Yeah, because that's the model that Northumbria also had when you started. Was it?
Well, like
head of subjects. They had 1926 when Tommy Burton. It was the head of subjects, and it was the head of painting, head of sculpture, head of thing, and it's that pushing you into a medium, and it's that
you have to identify
less encompassing, like model of teaching. That you have to define yourself to then be legitimized in the art world.
They do,
afterwards.
They do that in London as well. Like lots of different art universities in London have the sculpture and the painting and the new media.
Yeah.
The new media.
The new media together.
Yeah, all the new media are put together. But I personally think that this more holistic approach of everybody being fine art is a lot more beneficial, because, like, you know, deciding what element of your practice that you are at such an early stage in it seems a bit bonkers to me.
Is it fine art? This is a question that I've been like asking a lot. It's like, is it fine art or contemporary fine art? Because fine art in a lot of people, this is going back to the advertising thing again. It's like I've been to places to sort of rep this course, and every time you say fine art, people come to the first year and they go, well, this isn't fine art. This is contemporary. Like I paint. I do this. I want to paint pictures or portraits. And I know there is a discussion whether or not contemporary fine art will come in. It will be reworded.
Contemporary creative practice, for me, would, like, fine art doesn't, I don't think it fits.
Like Northumbria's kind of...
It's just contemporary creative practice, it's just being creative.
I always understood fine art to mean contemporary art. I think a lot of people think it means, like, being very, like, traditionally, technically, artistically skilled when you say fine, because they're like, ooh, fine, so you're a really good drawer, you're a really good painter. But I always thought that fine art meant contemporary art, as opposed to, like, the other kind of creative things you might go into after foundation.
So there's a question about how you were taught about art at a lower level. Because you're
then
from
how
down
that then
south.
like frames your like the way you understand it later on.
Like, so is geography a thing as well? So if you're from down south, and I know that I know that the arts like what we were talking about with the localized London-centric art world, and it's kind of, are you taught more about the fine art, contemporary art, the shift, not for that matter, you're not taught about the shift between the two, that you're just told that fine art encompasses everything.
I literally can't
up north, where sort of like in York, where I'm from, I was taught art was very much like contemporary. You can do whatever you want. Like, well, actually, Robin's looking at me.
Oh,
We're from similar places.
I feel like I didn't know what it was at all until I came to uni.
No, I agree.
Same. I don't know if it's a regional thing. It's probably just the actual teachers that you come into contact with at your school, because you know.
Because you've got different curriculum.
Well, like when we were at on the weekend, we were at Featherstone, and I can't remember what her name was, but she sounded amazing. Like she teaches art in what was her name?
Christine McRae.
Something. But she teaches in a secondary school, and like the way that she seems to go about teaching is a lot more inspiring than it sounded like a lot of us listening to her talks secondary school art experiences were, and a lot more broad. But that's not necessarily because of the teachers. That's like they have so many restrictions on them, what they can and can't do, like resources, budgets, time, like how much engagement there is.
What so friends from art school are now art teachers, a few of them, and I was like meeting them not that long ago, and we were chatting about, like, I think the way that education, like art education, is taught to people secondary level is appalling. Like, I think it's really terrible, and I think that has a lot of effect as to how art is received within wider society, because that is the only experience that a lot of people have is from that engagement. Anyway, she was saying that she'd love to, like, you know, and a lot of our pals, like her partners, like, you know, he's creative, her sisters are like in contemporary art, like a lot of our pals are in contemporary art, and she would love to get people to do those types of things, but actually what it is the kind of the examination at the end. The people that teach, that mark the examinations are very, well, they're quite senior, because they quite often are retired teachers.
Yeah.
So their understanding of art is so different to the art teacher's understanding, because they have taught for how many years in a secondary school, and are now you know, doing the qualifications, like marking. So it's actually, although, you know, and she does like kind of sneak it in and stuff like that, when it comes to the actual end bit where they need to get qualification from it, they have to go down this very narrow route of like a still life that you draw for 6 hours or whatever it is. You know, and I think until the way that is,
the whole
is
thing
changed,
is operating,
then it'll kind of dissipate.
I think it's interesting because we met up with our external examiner on Wednesday or something like that, and he is from a different university, and he's a tutor at a different university. He did the BA here, and the fact that it is that when you get that examiner in at the end, or the deadline or something like the assessment, is that if you have the moderator coming in and they come in and look at other universities, so there is this kind of like spider's web of everyone like swapping over and coming into different places. So why isn't that there must be like this, you know, you get the old guard or like the older generation kind of being, this is how we taught, so you have to do like still life, or you have to do this is fine art. But whereas you kind of, if you are like getting someone from one institute to go into another institute just for a day, then you'll see this kind of change and shift of how universities work. So I kind of like the Northumbria model, like how that works. But
if we're thinking like within a school context, it doesn't tend to be a teacher from another institution. It's like a senior, like a senior examiner,
I'm talking about
and like they have, that's like its own job, that they just do that, and they don't like, some of them do other stuff. Like some of them are teachers, especially for other subjects, like, I don't know, for essay marking. I remember some of our teachers saying they took it on as extra money to like mark A-level papers and stuff. But yeah, like I think the other difference, because obviously school and uni is always going to be different, but schools are also like subject to the whims of government curriculum changes all the time, in a way that universities aren't necessarily. They are to some extent, but they have more autonomy over their decisions to some extent.
I don't remember, but do teachers at secondary school mark and then the examiners moderate?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, so it is your teacher marking you and then someone else.
Not when I was at school, so I mean, I went to school quite a wee while ago.
not as long as
But they would mark throughout the year, but your end of year examination would get, particularly in what we had was higher in standard grade, which would be higher as the equivalent of your A level. That got sent off, your portfolio got sent off to be marked.
I think
So they didn't mark, your teacher didn't mark your
I think for ours
stuff.
it was similar to like here where they mark and then they have to send a big sample to be moderated from different bands. But I think, yeah, I don't really know. I know that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's to get the top banding, bottom banding, and anything in between to make sure everything kind of correlates and matches up. And if they're from a different institute, like this is at university level, so like meeting Craig the other day was good because he's going, well, my students are doing this, and so he can kind of go, oh well, the nation are kind of as a whole creating work that's a very good standard. So actually, your grades are right, fine, but it's like if he's saying, well, actually, your institute's doing much better than sort of say what mine are, or the other way around, then it needs to be sort of sorted out. And I think it's an interesting thing to look at with kind of statistics and all that. But that could be something else. I think that's
what
how
does statistics mean?
well, yeah,
it's a whole other discussion.
I think it's interesting how, when I look back on it and my schooling and learning and pedagogy and teaching and all that, how, like, you know, the idea of collaborating on an artwork, you know, feels a bit like, whoa, we've never done that at school, and like they would never have been like really encouraging of that either necessarily, because you can't mark it.
you can't
It's
get
really
report.
No, you need to work on your own.
Yeah.
Stop talking.
And now it's like it's totally different, and it's you know, they really want you to have those conversations and want you to talk, and that can become the artwork in this situation here. And it's so and schooling has become so sort of like very standardised, and these people need to learn this, and it's just yeah.
As well, I think
They
it's
still
strange.
struggle to market, I think, but they still encourage you to do it.
Yes,
I know me and Sophie like submitted our work together this time.
Oh yeah.
And that was like a bit of a struggle, but also they wanted us to do it, but they weren't sure how it was going to work. Like none of the tutors seemed that.
Yeah, because and we weren't sure, I guess, because we had like we didn't know where like the boundaries of the collaboration were, so we just put our independent and collaborative work all in like one space.
One space.
But like I did a collaboration with a friend as well, and we just got the same mark.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah.
We
didn't.
had different feed. So
That's interesting.
the tutors do their marking in a pair, and Katie had a different pair to me, and then we both went to each other's feedback as well, and like.
Well, that's quite odd because when Georgia and I worked together in first year, we submitted our final summative together, and we had to sign something for it.
Did you?
Because we actively said we want to be there, and we want to get our feedback together. We were submitting together. We've done performances and stuff like that, so we would do that, and then we got the same. Essentially, we got the same mark, but we got the individual sheet, if you get me.
Yeah.
So
was all the verbal feedback?
we didn't have separate work. That's something that's different to you guys. We solely said we're a collaboration in first year. We'll do this. So I suppose they didn't have much leeway to kind of say, where is your other work? And like, well,
But did you get the verbal feedback?
verbal feedback together?
Was it just one session then?
Yep.
So we had two, and they were reasonably different, I'd say.
I would say quite different.
Yeah.
So it's so subjective, isn't it? Really.
I think it's like
so
own it.
interesting as well, though.
Yeah.
In Katie's, they talked a lot about Katie's independent practice, and then they were like,
They said
Katie
that
is your practice.
That I am Sophie's practice.
And then we were so confused.
Because Sophie's practice is the collaboration, so I am, like me.
Practice, yeah.
I am her practice.
Wow.
Yeah, we had to go to the pub, we didn't know.
I think within that then is the kind of student leading the decision to say that you are together. Like, would you have rather wanted the feedback together? Would you rather wanted one grade as a whole, or?
I think because we had separate work, probably not. I
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we're still in like this place of trying to work out what's what, and we don't really know, and we still don't know, and I think it's just trial and error, like trying things together, trying things separate. Blah, blah, blah.
But I think that's also on the heads of the people who are marketing that, to look at how they market. If there is this more sort of you've got to learn, you've got to collaborate, you've got to do, or not got to, but if you want to do this, then maybe the marking scheme or how they mark should be a little bit more lenient, or not lenient, because that sounds like they're taking more time over it, but like more
loose.
Loose in marking of everything.
But maybe it has already got a bit more, because if you're saying you and Georgia had to sign something and we didn't have to do that, so even
ours was a year before.
Well, it would have been 2 years before if you didn't first year.
Yeah.
So like even from then, it seems like kind of the openness to. I think tutors are super open to collaboration. It just can present like an issue for them in.
But I also think they quite enjoy that issue because it tests them as well. Because most of the tutors, especially in the English class, they work collaboratively anyway. So I think that they like that test of how can we mark this, like. So I think that's why, because like within the first few weeks of starting this course, they were like, you know, work together, and I was like, well, what? Because like Robin was saying, I had no idea what I was entering into when I started this course, because I just enjoyed it, and like I'll just see how it goes, and I was so like pleasantly surprised at like collaboration. Well, I didn't really understand what collaboration was. Or they even existed, so
like how to make being in a band, man.
It's like going back to teaching A-level art. Is that stop talking, don't don't talk. Like just do your own work. Focus. You copying. I got told off for copying they thought I traced a bird off someone else. I was just like, what? No, I'm just a good drawer.
But now he taught. So what? If you now he taught. So what if you did? What's the like?
So appropriate.
It was interesting what you were saying about how, you know, am I only in this collaborative thing or solo work? Like you can do both. There's no like either or. I think that's something that is a lot more easy to fulfill after you've graduated because, well, not graduated because you don't need to graduate. You can still be an artist and not have graduated from an art degree, which is great. And it's like you can do it all. You don't need to pick, and I think we don't need to get so bogged down in the marks. Yeah, you know, like that isn't very helpful, I think, for anyone, including yourselves and myself. It's about, you know, doing what you want to do and knowing that you've tried to achieve that. Whether they like it or not is irrelevant, because, you know, in 10-15 years time, where some of us have done some really interesting artwork, they're not going to care that we got a third or didn't like finish our degree.
Gets me, because like if it doesn't benefit, it doesn't make anything any easier, and it bogs us down. I don't understand why it's there. Like it just seems like it's there because it's there. Like it's stuff that happens at work. Like they do things like you marry up the bottles on the back of the bar where you siphon off like the same bottles into each other and then put restock, and they do that every night, even though you don't need to do it. You only need to do it once a week. Because for stock takes, you do it every Sunday for stock take. So that's the only time you need to marry up, but they do it every week because that's what they've done all the time. It's like marking art. It's like there because that's what they've done all the time. Like, it's just this like, it's so hard to just think, you know what, let's just try something. You just go for it.
I think that's also in part to do, like, you know, with you paying for a degree. They need to market it so that they can be like, and these people did really well, and these people didn't do so well, and this is what they've paid for, and now you know when you've got the paper, and it doesn't even look real.
Justifying it for themselves.
That you've got for your money.
Exactly. So you know.
But we're it's like us putting stress on ourselves for them. So they can justify that they're doing.
And they're being paid for some reason or another.
Rather than going, you know what, these guys want to pursue themselves as artists and pursue themselves within the art world, so like they're paying for it, so let them do that. Like
but I think I think that, you know, it's not, I don't want to be like them, they, because I feel like that sounds very like students, tutors. Like tutors also have a lot of pressures, and they have to do a lot of things that they don't necessarily agree with, because again, it comes back to that like necessity of like
Yeah.
you need money, you need a job.
Yeah.
I don't mean the tutors. I wasn't on about the tutors, and they have to grade regardless. Like that's because that's built in within the curriculum. But it's like it just goes. It's beyond like it's like the curriculum. Why is it still? I just don't get it.
It's more,
I don't understand why it's
because
there.
they're situated within an institution.
Yeah, I know the tutor. Like I'm not. That wasn't me.
No, I
bashing
didn't think you. I just want to make that clear to our
Yeah.
listeners,
I
in
wasn't.
case any of them are the tutors.
No, I wasn't. It was
Big
nothing.
fans.
It's nothing to do with the people that mark me. It's to do with the fact that there is the need for them to mark me.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, because we're coming up to sort of the 2-hour mark. Like, is there anything that someone wanted to, or like someone did research on that they wanted to like bring up, sort of before we end? That's like something that's really on the tip of their tongue that they haven't been able to get out yet.
I've only just thought of this.
Yeah.
So like in relation to peer-to-peer learning, pedagogy, and like the cost of university and all that sort of stuff, like programs like School of the Damned, which is peer run. School of the Damned is this group of artists who got together a few years ago and decided they didn't want to pay for a master's, which is very, very clever, and that they would do only Skillshare, so that nothing would cost any money apart from maybe if they wanted to get a train somewhere, and they would spend one weekend a month visiting all the different other artists who are on the course that they'd created around the country, and they'd invite tutors to give lectures and seminars, and in exchange for their time seminaring and lecturing, they would, you know, teach them how to embroider, or teach them ceramics, or teach them laser cutting, or lots of other different things, and they would share. That's how they would gain their learning through that, and that collaborative working, and then that year picks the next year. There is no the students.
Who's
pick,
this run by? Do you know?
It's run by them.
And
So there's
the
not
people
run by
who set it
anybody.
up.
They set it up. They have a sort of like, this is our manifesto, this is what we do. But that manifesto will change with every year. The previous year is not looking after the new year. The current people are the people running it. They only run it for a year, and then they hand it down. This manifesto may have changed a little bit from the previous year, but the other people can just throw it out and do whatever the fuck they like.
It's insane.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That is cool.
So I think like that potential, I mean maybe this is a controversial point, but that potentially only works because those people have gone through an undergraduate in art school or university, whatever, or some of them, not everyone. So yeah, a self-organised like undergraduate course would be quite tricky. Maybe it wouldn't be. You could experiment to try. But also, I think that one's a particularly good example of like artist-run alternative educational platforms, because it does seem that. But then again, they potentially are replicating a little bit of like what. Potentially replicating of what the experience they've already undergone. So I mean, yeah, there's other ones that I think are just totally nonsense and incredibly elitist. And I think those guys really try not to be elitist, but again, still boils down to who has free money to, you know, go up and down the country. And I think what this year of School of Dams have been really great at doing is that it hasn't been so London focused, and they have tried to do regionally across most of England, if not the UK. So I think that's good, but there are still points of elitism that comes into that, and I think, you know, they're trying their hardest to try and dissipate that, but it's super tricky.
I can't remember, was Paul Stewart's alternative art school undergrad or post?
Undergrad.
Undergrads,
Was it
yeah,
undergrad?
so that, yeah.
And I think that came out of the time of his undergrad was the time of the tuition fee increases.
Yeah.
I now know who Paul Stewart is.
Yeah. But that was interesting because when we think about that, like obviously that didn't kind of work out in the end, and that was an undergraduate. Well, it was kind of student run, but they did also have, because their tutors came along because they opposed the. So that probably helped it to be.
Did he say why it didn't work?
It's just bloody hard work.
Yeah, and he was really funny. He was saying how like obviously a lot of the kind of ideas he had at the time were like maybe a bit naive, and I guess that's why it would be so hard to run an undergraduate, because you just don't know what you're doing.
And it's kind of like that. If the manifesto with the School of the Damned is like that, it changes and it's run by other people. But if he was setting it up, then maybe he had this notion that he would then become essentially the dean of this alternative art school, and it became more of a corporate thing, and then it becomes a more institute, and then it becomes more. We'll get funding from somewhere, and then something. It's not.
Yeah.
I think that with what the problematic artist-led undergrads and stuff like that, maybe it's
I don't know whether they do apply for funding. I get the impression that they don't, but I mean they technically could apply for funding to pay for their transport to different parts of the country, because they are. They do exhibitions. They are benefiting communities.
So it could become self-sustainable, like in a small, like little one-year community.
I mean, yeah, I think at the beginning of the course they'd have to like apply for the money. They'd hopefully get the money, and then that would maybe sustain them for the year. That obviously your year couldn't apply for next year because you're not related in any way. And also, apparently, if you put someone forward for the year afterwards, you can't have a say in whether they get in or not. You can put them forward, but you can't then be like, or if you knew them, I think maybe if you knew them, you have to say that you know them, and that you will have no part in whether they do get it or not. So it's
Yeah.
I want to ask just a wee quick question which relates back to this exhibition. Yesterday, when you guys were talking about the purpose, you guys were saying that your involvement in this exhibition felt that it was outside of the university. Not everybody in the group, but I think quite a lot of folk. I wanna unpick that a wee bit. What do you mean?
It's outside of the what? The
Well, I've said university, but I imagine it's probably outside of your course. Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Is it the outward facing?
Because we were saying, like, do we still make things outside of the course? And then I was like, no. Olivia said, oh, do you not think that this is outside?
So I still view it inside the university.
But
I think without being at university, I wouldn't have been able to do this.
Definitely.
But it's more like the fact that it's the course. It's like outside of our. We don't have. If we didn't want to, we wouldn't have to put this in within our end of year.
you still don't have to, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, do you think maybe the fact it's like its location? If you were doing this in another space that wasn't physically in the university, and we can see it all around us.
Yeah. Like a gallery that's unconnected to the university, that would probably change that. But also, like, I guess, you know, we were introduced to you through Kate, and that so we kind of, that network came through the university structure in a way, although I feel like she was doing that, you know,
because of our interest.
because of interests, rather than because that was part of her job as a tutor, because I feel like that's above and beyond
I think
her.
I think it's still important that we associate with Northumbria, and the fact that if it was in an outside, or I think this is outside, but like if we are located in another gallery or somewhere else in the city, but we're still associated with Northumbria because we're talking about stuff that is happening to us, and this is what we're experiencing. It's the kind of.
Well, why do you think this is outside of Northumbria? It's like totally intrinsically linked to Northumbria.
I think there's a lot of.
Northumbria University on the
We don't get to
PEDAGOGIES.
use it, really.
Yeah, we were saying.
It's because it's this abstract. What do we quote?
Well, we said it. Something that was
Yeah.
wrote on the wall about how we look at it as like a gallery as something to aspire to, but you don't, like, while you're doing your undergrad, you don't usually actually ever get to use the spaces. Like, if we want to put on our own exhibitions, we use like the project spaces.
It's not quite the gallery. It's the experimental.
I don't know, they never
one.
come and
It's the
advertise.
prototype gallery. Do you know what I mean? Because we're prototype artists.
You could, but I don't know how.
People do the project spaces for midpoint. They use the whole of the gallery.
This one.
Yeah, for the midpoint, not yet.
Yeah, but that's if it's free, isn't it? They
It is.
would they kind of give you a few weeks exhibition as an undergraduate student? I think it's unlikely, in a way. It's not impossible.
But at the same time, like, maybe I get the impression that this is like programmed and that they have a program of artists that they want to show, but maybe because you aren't so easily available to use a space, that can push you further afield to places like the New Bridge Project or Vane, and pushing you into approach, I mean, not pushing, subtly
Like necessitating that you have
in that
to,
way, because you can
Because
get
that's conscious decision?
I
For
think
the-
it
for
should
the
be.
university?
I think it should be. I think they should be talking to you about that, because you can, you know, if you wanted to, you could rent the space in Newbridge for £50 for like a week or something, and if you wanted a
They don't tell us
Didn't
that.
tell
We
us
didn't
Exactly,
know that.
exactly.
We did not know that.
Not the big space over in Gateshead, but they've got other little project spaces.
Yeah.
If you were to get a membership at the Newbridge project, which is £60 over the year, you could pay £5 a month. You could use those spaces for free.
Guys,
60
who knew
pounds.
this?
Yeah, right,
We're
I'll be going that. I
We'll
did.
be writing this down.
I will admit I did only know
But it's
this.
just about
Only because of my friend that.
stuff like that that's going on.
Oh yeah, Juliet's like the coordinator of practice makes practice.
No,
coordinator.
no. I'm on the steering group,
Okay.
so I help organise events through. Well, yeah, we have like a steering group of like 10 or something people, and we decide on some of these events that are happening, talks, discussions, workshops, stuff that we want to do, trips to other cities, and things. But I think that's something that I would have wanted to know about. As a student, I didn't think I really understood. And I think also the Newbridge Project sort of mode of membership has changed, where previously you had to be an artist, now it can be anybody. Previously, I don't think you could be a student, but now you can be a student member. And from that, you can you can earn your money back over the year in using that space just one time. And then you get all these different events for free. Or, like the life drawing that happens the first Monday of every month, which I also help coordinate, that would then be like half price.
Yeah.
And you'd be able to earn your money back from all these different things.
Where do I go to pay for this?
Where do you pay for this? So you can go, I think you can go online, you can just you just submit some stuff, like your email and, maybe some photographs of your work, but it's also open to people who aren't artists as well to apply to be a member. But I don't think there's any criteria. I think maybe there might be some studio member criteria where you can't be on a course when you've applied, but if you've then got it and then go on to a course on the end of the world, then you can have this access to all this great learning, which is what the kind of Newbridge project is trying to achieve, where you don't need to necessarily be on an MFA. You can then go on to do this kind of different, it's practice makes practice. It's you getting all these different amazing events at the tip of your finger in the city centre, and you having your own personal learning, and it's all self-directed. Because sometimes after university you feel a bit like, what's going on? Like, I've all this freedom, and what's going on? Like, how am I going to continue this? And, like, places like the Newbridge Project, but there are other places that are all doing very similar things. That is a really wonderful community that you can get absorbed into and make connections with other artists that can push your practice forward as well as theirs. And loads of other opportunities and events as well, like exchanges, commissions that are only available to members.
I'm curious about this, because you guys can put stuff on in the project space. What is the difference between the project space and the gallery space?
Well, that's where the bunker name came from.
Yeah.
Is it just
Maybe not the concept of a project space, but the idea of using that project space, specifically Gallery North project space, is that it is a bunker. It's no windows, no.
And it's not actually connected to Gallery North.
And it's not actually connected to Gallery North. Because Gallery North has been this sort of thing that's moved around 3 times in 3 years. But
it's like they put Gallery North project space just to kind of make us create the illusion when we go, we're using the Gallery North project space. Woo-hoo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we know we're just using like a room that you book out for an hour or so a day, and then like.
So it's the public's. It's the.
I think it's the public facing.
Yeah.
So, for example, in second year, a big part of your second year programme is the second year exhibitions. So there are 5 groups, and each group kind of looks at one of the different like Whitechapel documents of contemporary art books, and they're like, it's your first, generally it's your first opportunity to have like an exhibition, and it's really public facing, but it's not really, because it's somewhere that no one knows about. It's located within Squires Annex. You only know where Squires Annex is
if you go to the uni.
Yeah, but actually loads of Northumbria uni
if you're in the arts,
you have to use that building. It's then not even obvious from the outside of that building that there's a project space. You could go in and be like,
It's never on the wall like Gallery North.
It's quite.
Space,
I feel like
it has that little piece of paper, doesn't it? Like.
So do you just feel like it's a bit of a rubbish space? and like
It's not.
I think it's just hard to advertise.
But then if
and
we think
find.
about project
Yeah.
spaces as a whole throughout how we use project spaces upstairs as well, do they run differently than the
Then
Gallery
that
North
one.
project space?
Yeah.
Because they don't have like specific lighting. Like they have the same lighting grid in Gallery North project space, but they don't upstairs on the fourth floor.
Yeah.
I know Georgia and I were trying to get lighting installed into the 417 one, but 418 is a crit space which should have better
Yeah.
lighting in. So like that one's an empty studio, but it should have this kind of idea that it is maybe, well, I don't know, because it's not a gallery. We were saying that do you aspire to present in an art gallery
Yeah.
context? So should we have the lights in there, or should we mould the project spaces the way that we want to, which is what we do with a lot of the screenings and stuff, or the screenings, the readings, the
But then
performance workshops.
they remain so internal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those, because they're in a project space which is located like in our studio,
Mhm.
and I think for me, like, a big thing about the difference is to do with like the public facingness. So I feel like the second year exhibitions, I feel like they're all like, yeah, it's great, but at the same time I don't know if it's a conscious thing or unconscious, but the university is sort of mitigating its own exposure and risk by putting you somewhere quite private still.
Yeah.
It's a public exhibition, but they're not as confident in it as they say they might be, because they won't put it in the university's gallery.
This is what we were interested
Still only
with.
people we invite. Like
Yeah.
in reality, it's like our friends and family that we have.
And
to
we don't
Last
get any
year.
if we want to buy drinks for it, or as
You
a
don't
group
get
you have to
any,
fundraise that. There's no budget from the course's budget, which, if it's an integral part of the course, I find that a bit weird that there's no money set aside, because it's a big part of your professional practice module.
I think last year with the
£9,000.
appropriation group, Robin and I were part of that, and we actually took Gallery North project space and just said, Gallery North project space is a concept, let's move it. And we took Gallery North project space to the Hancock pub, and we said, and we advertised it, we marketed, said, it's always been this. We've made posters from the past, we make posters from the future, and we said project spaces are wherever you want them to be, but Gallery North project space has now moved to the Hancock, and then it created this history around it, and we were like, well, why does this course structure say that we have to fund our own alcohol? If we're setting a pub, they've got a bar. And like, if you go to an art gallery, you kind of say, there's or art gallery preview, there's free wine or free alcohol. But if you say, come to my art gallery exhibition at Gallery North Project Space, there's a bar, but you'll have to pay. We're not hiring, we're not doing this. And it's that weird, it's a different kind of ethos that we had around our second year exhibition seminars that say is taught. So like we kind of completely disregarded everything that had come. Well, no, we didn't disregard it. We acknowledged it, and we just extrapolated what we wanted from it and morphed the structure of the seminar program
I think
to meet our
that's
exhibition.
what's interesting about that is that, for like, personally, I thought it worked quite well in terms of getting people to go. It felt like a lot of people came because it was in a pub, and that was like one of the things we talked about. It breaks down these like elitist things about people going to galleries. But I think like if we said, say if I said I'm gonna, like the red thing, like people messaged me being like, oh, we couldn't find it so we didn't go. And like, then I thought, well, yeah, I could have done it. Why did I do it in uni? I did it in uni because
This is
I
an
could do it
exhibition
in
that
uni.
you've got.
Yeah, sorry. Side note, just an exhibition.
Because we can use that.
So like, we could say that the project space in the second year studios is a gallery. We could call it a gallery. And like, it doesn't, just if people don't go, enough people don't go, does that mean it's not a gallery? If it's in a uni, does that mean it's not a gallery? It's like, what do you class as a gallery, and what is, because like, do you know what I mean? Like the Hancock pub that night for us, or in general, was a gallery. So like, it's like, what is a successful gallery for you?
Yeah.
And beyond that, encourage people to then see it as the Hancock as something else.
Yeah.
So like, we've had exhibitions there. Well, I can just think of two at the minute, but like, we've had two of them there that have been since.
Yeah.
Not since we opened people's eyes, but more that we kind of went. Do you know what? Like, we just kind of shone that light on the possibility
Yeah.
of it. So
Here he goes again.
and then again with the red extension in year 2, in the year 2's project space, is that fact that the tutors then came to us and said, "You've really cleaned up the space.
Yeah, they were like, it's a nice.
It's a really nice space now."
Judy's buzzed about
Everyone was
it.
like shocked about
And it
it.
was just like, well, why didn't anyone take ownership of just
Yeah.
sanding down the wall or cleaning it? Or but then it's like, should it be cleaned? Should it be this? And there's all these questions around the gallery or the project space.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Could it not be like a place that the students take charge of and curate and govern themselves?
Yeah.
I think that's what
Well,
you can do though. Like
yeah.
you can do that with your house. I could
Yeah.
decide that my living
Yeah.
room is going to be a gallery and call it 35 Melon Terrace Gallery.
Which is
Yeah.
something that we are working
Hey.
on.
It's coming.
It's coming in 2 weeks.
There's
You're in the group. We're
Everyone's
just need to
invited.
discuss this. And you, Katie.
There's a gallery
And everyone
space in
else.
London,
Yeah.
which is run by Bob.
Bob
I can't
Bob.
remember-
Bob
it's spelled
Fossil.
Biggin-Nail, but I can't pronounce his last name very well. But it's a gallery space run by him, and is this it gallery?
Oh, I
mean,
follow
yeah,
him, yeah.
A217. And when I got there, it was in Chelsea Arts College, and it was a room. And it was the reason it was called A217 is because that was the door number. You know, we all
Yeah.
get door numbers in universities, and it was literally just a cupboard. It was basically tiny, but it was really great because it just. The whole space was really well curated, it worked really well, and people there were drinks inside, there were drinks outside, but he called it a gallery. He made it an Instagram page. He worked with other people, and they turned it into a gallery space just by calling it that. If you can find a cupboard, a big cupboard,
I think with what Gallery North Project Space became, we took it on through the Instagram, and I think that we've talked about social media quite a lot, but it's that kind of if you are marketing it as this different space, that it did shift what Gallery North Project Space was, and people were going, oh wait, well, is this a gallery? It's like,
yeah,
and
but
the
you
fact
can
that
call it
you
something
then-
else as well. You don't need to
Yeah.
call it that.
Packaging goes a lot way, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It's like it could
having
be
a
just,
website,
yeah.
So do you think there's a hierarchy then within, and you feel like you're not legitimised by?
I mean, I agree totally with the fact that you can make anywhere a gallery.
Yeah.
I just think, and I definitely think you can, and that's a good thing to go and do. But I think, how do I phrase this? Like, that's true at the same time as it's true that it does reflect that maybe they don't value what you're doing as much, that they won't put it in their public facing place. So I think for me it's more about how the decisions made about where student work can and can't be is a reflection of the university's attitude towards the student. And it kind of comes back to what you were saying, you don't need to graduate, you can still be an artist, but when are you a student, when are you an artist, are you a student artist, and or when you're still doing an art degree, can you call yourself an artist, or are you just an are you just a student? And I feel like by not allowing you in here, the university as an institution is very much framing you as student or student artist, not legitimate artist. And that's I'm not someone who's I really want to be in a gallery. It's just more how I feel that reflects on it.
It's like how all the paintings are.
Yeah.
Anything to do with the uni. The paintings are on the uni.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a big.
That's a big, yeah. The collection.
Yeah.
The Northumbria collection is obviously
That we saw when we came
we
in.
saw. And the fact that I think there was comments made about it, and then suddenly along the first floor, loads of stuff popped up.
Yeah.
Never seen it.
Loads.
Stuff on the fourth floor is this thing of people that have left. I know Joanna's got one up, but she's just recently left. But we've still got stuff that's there from years and
I
years
thought
ago.
it was all student.
But there is stuff that
It's
is
not?
changing.
No, that's
There's-
why.
no,
I was
there's,
like, what? Is that what
Kate-
you- no.
Me and Kate
It's
have
not.
been told off before
For doing film and you were
for touching
A
a
valuable-
very expensive artwork that was
It's
on
just
fourth
in our
floor.
corridor.
So we'd obviously we assumed it was a student's work because
Was it?
promote your own, but
Was
no.
it painting? Was it?
It's the one just outside the lifts on fourth floor.
But by
Really
you
big
saying that, you saying
Yeah,
You thought it was just a student's
yeah,
artwork.
there's that. I'm valuing it less
You're
than that. But as in Yeah, I think we were just surprised that they were like, oh, it's really valuable. And I'm thinking, why did you spend loads of money out of your
Because it
budget,
didn't
which
look
is
any
so
different
limited,
to
buying this artwork in when you could be like representing
Is
the
it
people
a
that
new?
actually go?
Yeah.
Is it a new artwork? Because I understand that collection. So the history of the University Gallery in Northumbria is a really juicy one. So like, not Gallery North, University Gallery. So University Gallery was like kind of operating a wee bit like a private gallery when it was located over in the library. And with that, they had a collections policy, and they represented a wee tiny amount of artists, and Norman Cornish, who is a very successful artist from the region, and there's a lot of his artworks that I think when he died, his estate bequests pretty much his whole archive to the university collection. So the university has a collection, and it has had in the past a collections policy. I don't know if it still has a collections policy or not, and if it is making new acquisitions. But I suppose, you know, what the people that are working with the university collections, they want to get it out of the store and they want to put it out on display, and they felt that the fine art studio corridors are the best, you know, association to have that out on display. But yeah, the idea of it operating as a private gallery with, you know, and not having, and that's why Gallery North, when it was instituted over there as like more of a project space, was set up because the what are they called? The academics, the teaching staff were not. They felt like they weren't given the opportunities from the university galleries to show their work or to show students' work within that space, because it was very specific towards a very small number of artists. So that's why they set up this other space called Gallery North, which has then had this weird journey over the last like 3 years where it's moved to, you know, 2 different venues. So yeah, there's always like complications, I suppose, on why things appear and don't appear. And the problem is that a lot of institutions are so big that people can't, you know, you can't like, they can't communicate that effectively to you. They should, but they can't, you know. So now it just looks like they're putting up crap work that, you know, and why aren't they like showcasing you guys when they should be showcasing you? But I'm wondering if there's like another thing, you know, like, do you see a gallery just for putting work up, or like, you know, having work in the space, or is it, and this is kind of where my research is enacting, or is it the people that run the gallery, like the curators, could they engage with you guys in a way that was of course supporting exhibitions, but there was another way of them working with you that contributed to your learning, but wasn't necessarily like putting shows up, because that's only one aspect of that practice, and it's a good valuable thing that, you know, you should put your work up in public. But is there another, I don't know, another way that things could be enriched in a different way?
Well, I guess by the fact that we visit these exhibitions, I guess that's the argument for that.
Yeah.
That, you know, they are enriching our education by showcasing other people that we might not.
But like, that's only to a point. So like, I think what I really loved about so like the thing that we were talking about earlier was I'd asked the bunker to just respond to a few terms which are quite big, and one of them was PEDAGOGIES, and I totally loved like the extract that you guys like sent back. So much so I've written it on the wall, and I've actually taken a quote for a submission to my ongoing year. But like, just the idea of it being a resource, and like you guys are craving active learning, and just want, you know, I thought those two phrases were really interesting to pick up on.
Yeah, so I think it is like it's like, I think there needs to be more of an acceptance that we are all artists in our own right. Is that pretty fair to say? Even if you are doing an undergraduate, everyone's artists in their own right. It's rather than like, I don't know, I kind of get what I got told. I kind of get what was being said to me, but I got told that I'm here to learn how to make art, So it's kind of, in that perspective, it's kind of, I'm looking how people make art, and that's how you make art, whereas I'm not quite there yet. So I think that for me is what, when I think about the university gallery and the fact that we can't use it, it's like, well, maybe when you've learned how to make art, then you can use it. It's like,
But you never...
But it's like, because it's so all the time.
We don't
it's
want
like,
to,
I still feel like that.
yeah.
There's no end point.
Yeah, there is.
You don't
no-
stop learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is what it's like. Rather than I'm here to learn how to make, I'm here just to learn about it. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone's already an artist. It's just learning about it and developing it. So
how
like,
to like put it out
I
there.
don't
Like
think
when we
the
did the
world stops
proposal,
in.
for you was like the first time we'd ever had to like,
yeah.
well, for me anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
was the first time we had to like articulate like what we actually,
Mm-hmm.
like you get taught to do like art statements and stuff, but not in like I think it was really helpful to in the way you broke down the proposal for us, like because you knew we were students were probably like not gonna know what to do, and then going forward I'd feel more like I could do that now.
Because like just coming from my own experience as a curator, like the way that I work with artists is that I invite them to do something and then we begin a conversation. So like that thing, you know, like when you guys leave university, you're obviously going to do your own practice, you're going to do stuff with your peers, you're going to make stuff happen. But ultimately you also want to engage with like public institutions, other curators, councils, you know, like whatever.
Yeah.
So like just having that experience of working with other people, I think.
Yeah,
I
think this has been a really useful experience, like learning how to engage with those institutions or people. It's so, like, and also to kind of learn. I think like learning by doing, not just like learning by reading or learning by listening, learning by doing. So like the challenges that can be presented by putting on a work. And so like, for example, the challenge that you've had about getting funding for this show, it's quite good for us to kind of see that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think you can use the gallery as a tool for learning by doing, like more about like how things happen. I think like another like way that because I'm doing a placement with like the Newcastle Arts team at the council, I found that a really good learning by doing kind of experience as well. So like all the challenges that have come from where the funding's come from for the residency that I'm like with, and kind of how you have to go about meeting people's expectations but retaining some sense of like autonomy over what you're like, how do you keep different people happy. And I think that's for like a community artist, but similarly for like a curator, you've got a lot of people you have to keep happy.
But then as an artist, like you have to apply to stuff and you need to still be true to what you're investigating, but then also be flexible and meet your own expectations. And also, not everyone's going to be an artist. You know, maybe some people will turn into curators or art administrators or marketing or educators. You know, so like I think that, you know, make your own work, but there's other ways of how the art industry kind of operates. You know, there's lots of different networks and expectations that have to be met, or you know, a lot of bloody funding and justification, which, you know, is the really dull bit, but yeah.
I think I'm just mindful of the fact that we've reached nearly 2 hours and 20 minutes, but the battery's only 2 hours long, so we haven't made it, but I'm just mindful that we might have to wrap up.
Summary, anyone?
Yeah. I think, well, actually, you didn't know what pedagogy was until yesterday, or Wednesday.
Yeah.
What do you think about it now?
Tommy.
Why is it always me that has to round these things up? I think it's obviously just about, you know, not necessarily kind of like teaching, so it's about understanding each other's kind of predicaments. And like, you know, we have kind of like encompassed necessarily something that we all have like inconsistencies when coming to a sort of like, you know, learning curriculum, and I think that's obviously the fact of all having the like accepting these sort of things and then having to negotiate them together through making like, you know, making the practice and making work, which is what I think we're doing, and it's kind of, you know, using this sort of art as a platform is kind of liberating ourselves of doing so.
And it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would everyone agree?
Yeah.
To an extent.
Read your quote, Ed.
Oh, I know.
Well,
I only get
I
that.
think Juliet had something to add to that.
It was just going to be like just those things also are like what Gail was saying about, you know, people becoming curators and artists and administrators and teachers and lecturers and lots of things. They're also not mutually exclusive. You know, like you said, like all our lecturers are also artists too. They're also doing research too, and you don't really have to pick. You can have your cake and eat it too if you want to.
Yeah.
Cake.
Do you have anything to say at the end?
No.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you to
Thank you
Tommy,
to our guests.
Juliet, Gail, and Robin.
Robin popped in.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
We
for
appreciate
coming.
it.
Like,
Yeah, it's been brilliant.
really good. This was our first chat with guests.
Yes.
So-
it was a good.
It was really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Next week, on Thursday, it's putting your work out there. And then on the Friday, it's local cultures, and we've got guests for that one as well.
Nice.
Yeah, next Friday we have Georgia
Bates.
Bates and
Donovan Jevons.
Donovan Jevons.
Anyone else is welcome to come along.
Please come.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, goodbye.
Bye-bye.